Welcome everyone. I'd like to welcome all the committee members, Councillor Young, Councillor Hamill, Gates, Tozer, Marshall and O'Neill. And we've got Councillor Curtis, Martin, LaCastra and Durham. So welcome along to today's meeting. First of all, get underway, tenants apologies, which will be nil. Leave of absence, nil. Item 3, confirmation of minutes, the 858th Transport and Infrastructure Committee. Do I have a mover? Councillor Tozer, second to Councillor Gates. Do I have any questions or any changes? Put the motion to, all in favour? Carry. Thank you. Number 4, conflict of interests. Councillor Gates.
Thank you, Chairman. The legal branch distributed a list and it's not actually quite correct. It's got a number of donations that were fully refunded, and I think everyone will recall the legal advice that they don't count, and so they didn't form part of my election return and they're irrelevant. But there's issues for me on item 6.3 where I received a donation 14 and 11 years ago. These are all well outside the relevant term. So I'm asking the committee to consider whether I need to make a declaration on that. It was Place Design Group who designed the Firth Park master plan. So that's the first one. The second one related to a lease to be granted at Pimpamar, and that related to donations in 2014 and 15. Not a huge amount, 1850 and 14, 390 in 2015 and 1,170 in 2016. And the final one related, there was a $390 donation in 2015 in relation to item 7.4, but I would not be declaring that. But Gasman Development Perspectives are also involved in the item 7.4, but I had approval from Council on the 25th of June to participate in a decision in which they were involved. So unless the committee feels the need for me to declare, I have prepared declarations in advance should anyone feel the need for me to make any declarations today, but I thought I'd seek the committee's consideration first.
I think we've had these conversations before. It's outside of relevant term. Does any councillors have any concern at this stage? No, so we'll continue on.
Thank you.
Okay, we've got start at the moment 5.1, 6.1, 6.2, 7.1, 7.2. At the moment, would anyone like to unstar any of these? I'm going to unstar 6.1. Would anyone like to unstar any of the others? No? Okay, so we'll go through the start items first. So 5.1, 6.2, 7.1, 7.2. Do I have a mover? Councillor Tozer, second to Councillor Gates. All in favour? Carry. Thank you. So we'll go to 6.1, personal mobility devices, PMD. Now, does anyone want a presentation for this stage? Sonny, I think, does anyone want a presentation? No, not at this stage, but we may have a question. So wait for the team to come up. Will you have a question? Bloody hell, big team.
There's a few of them.
Councillor Castro.
Yeah, so big team. I was just saying. One quick question, actually.
Question.
Yeah. Firstly, thanks, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me to have this unstarred just to ask a question. It was actually me who called for this report due to a lot of concerns about e-bikes and PMDs. It's just one question on page 21, where towards the bottom under city city challenges in enforcing e-bikes and PMDs. And it actually says that the city's current local laws do not specifically address the use of e-bikes and PMDs. Is that correct? Are we saying we don't have a city law which addresses this? There's nothing there?
Through the chair, thank you for the question, councillor. No, so our city laws, local laws were written several years ago before PMDs and e-bikes were a major issue. It does call out vehicles, and we can somewhat regulate. We can regulate some PMD use through prohibited signage. So Cavill Mall, Broadbeach Mall, we can regulate there. But also for our city laws officers to regulate, we'd be looking at the ability to impact someone's enjoyment of a public space, which is very difficult to regulate.
Sorry, I didn't get that. You'd be looking at what, sorry?
So we would be looking at, under the local law, there's some clauses in there about the obstruction of someone's ability to enjoy a public space, which is written into our local law, which is very difficult for us to capture evidence on and regulate. Also, we'd need to be there at the right place at the right time. And also any dangerous drive-in that may occur in those locations as well. So from our perspective, we are looking at the local law framework review at the moment, how we can include PMDs in there. Also important to note, our city laws officers do not have powers under Torum for speed-in, for any of those other activities that QPS can regulate.
Yeah, I understand that about the speeding. So there is. So even though it says there isn't, there is actually a law, a current local law. But even though the report says there isn't anything, you're saying it doesn't specifically address it.
Through the chair, no. And the way the local law has been written, it's very difficult for us to determine an offence against the current provisions in the local law. We can. It is a stretch, and it's very difficult for our officers to get any evidence. But that's why we want to review those to make sure they're fit for purpose moving forward.
Thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Gates.
Thanks, Chairman. It was exactly the area of the report that I too had highlighted, because I don't understand. I walk along the Ocean Way most days, and I've come to grief on occasions myself, and I don't understand if we can regulate the malls, why we can't regulate the Ocean Way with either a line that indicates where those vehicles might go. Why can't we?
Through the chair, so with the malls specifically, there is a clause in Local Law 11, Roads and Malls, that says we can prohibit PMD vehicle use in a mall, which is a defined space. So we have those prohibitive signs up in those locations. It's a bit different on the Ocean Way. The Ocean Way is not always under Local Law 11. It's a mix between Local Law 9 Parks and Local Law 11. So it's a different location depending on the Ocean Way. And for us to prohibit the whole Ocean Way would be something that we haven't done and would need to investigate. So that would be prohibiting the use of any of those devices along the whole Ocean Way.
I wonder if that might not be a good thing to investigate, to be honest, because it's pretty scary to walk along there, and you don't, often people have headphones on, don't hear them coming, and before you know it, they skittle past, and it's horrible. And you only have to look at the statistics in this report to know that it's an issue. So I don't know. We're reviewing our local laws at the moment. Is there an intent to provide us with a recommendation as part of that local law review?
Through the chair, yeah, PMD use has been identified to the City Standards team for that local law review. So we will be considering how we can uplift our local laws to cater for this.
But there's nothing we can do in the interim to designate a bike lane that must be used, because isn't it true that a local law might take a couple of years for us to actually get a result from by the time it goes to the state and to public ad and all the rest of it? So, I mean, this is a problem here and now.
Through the chair, yes, you're right. It would take some time for the local law to change. I'd like to, if I can, take that on notice regarding the bike lane and collaborate with some internal stakeholders on how we could look at that moving forward or more immediately.
Okay, could we get some advice in advance of full council, please?
Take it.
Yeah, that should be fine.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can we, some of the Ocean Way too, Matt, is road reserve as well. So I think there's different areas that's road reserve parks. So I think we need to understand the actual designation of each of the different parts of the path. So did you want to comment, Michael?
Yes, through the chair, I'm just might pass to Renee, but also I guess if we're yellow lining and restricting a portion of the Ocean Way to these types of vehicles, there could be actually increased speed and risk. So I don't know if the traffic team would like to comment on that as a potential.
Through the chair, I think one of the main issues is the definition of these devices in TORUM. So, I mean, we're talking about PMDs and e-bikes, and so a legal e-bike in the eyes of TORUM is essentially a bike. So if we start to prohibit these devices, it gets very complicated in relation to regular bikes, and we definitely don't want to be restricting regular bikes from using our Ocean Way, I wouldn't think.
So that was Councillor Marshall. And then,
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and through you. Just on page 23, in terms of the pathway safety toolkit, one of the frustrating things I've had a number of times is, I guess when you do a SEPTED, you're trying to find a way that you can change the environment to make things safe. And I've requested the U-shaped bollards that are sort of, I guess, staged so that somebody has to actually change their behaviour, slow down to go in and out. And we seem to have, and this is anecdotal, but not many complaints on paths that have those U-shaped bollards, but there's other paths where there's a long straight stretch, people will pick up speed, and parents and kids are, I guess, more at danger. When I've requested it, it always seems to get knocked back, even though there are those bollards in place in other areas of the city. So I was just wanting to get, and it might be a question or notice, but I just wanted to get, I guess, an understanding of where they can be put and why they can't.
Through the chair, so those devices are no longer an approved device in accordance with Austroads. The reason for that is impacts on disability access, and also, your regular bike users are impeded by then. And, if we're encouraging active travel, we want to be making it easier for people to cycle, and that's why those devices have been removed from the standard, because they have to get off and dismount to manoeuvre through them.
Yeah, I guess I'm probably not talking about the ones, say, at the top of, and I'm going to use an example, Burleigh Hill, where they've got the kind of the swinging gate. It's more the staggered ones. You can still stay on your bike and slow down. As somebody that works with disability, I don't understand how a wheelchair can't do the same. It's just forcing a change of behaviour to slow down to go through that kind of stage section, as opposed to being a block. I know the ones you mean into the national park at Burleigh, where there's that gate that swings. That they are, I guess, very prohibitive. But
through the chair, even the two yellow U-rails staggered, that's no longer used. What we could possibly look at is more of like a chicane-like device with garden beds or something. But obviously, that infrastructure then starts to get a little bit more costly.
Okay, thank you,
Councillor O'Neill.
Thanks, Chair. Just through you, not sure who wants to answer this, but are we waiting to see what comes out of the state government inquiry on e-bikes and shared paths before we make any decisions about local laws? Because I think the speed is, from my experience in the Ocean Ways I have in my area, it's actually the speed and the illegal e-bikes that are causing most of the problem. So it'd be interesting to see what the state government do, legislation-wise. But are we waiting to see what the outcome? Because that's not due till probably, was it March next year or something like that?
Through the chair, I won't speak to the timing of the local laws, but in relation to the city taking any action in this space, I would recommend waiting until March, because the line of questioning at the inquiry alluded to the fact they're looking at potentially some big changes, so around speed limits, the way the current speed limit system is set up for these different devices, the definition of the devices, helmet laws, so looking at, for some of these devices requiring more like a motorcycle helmet, age limits. So I think they're doing a thorough review of everything to do with these devices, and I think it would be it would be worth waiting to see what those are, because I think the space is going to change a lot come March.
Are there any differential in the law if you do have a designated lane for, we'll say, bikes, PMDs and e-bikes, and then you had Ocean Way? So if there was a complete segregation of two lanes, have we got the ability to manage that separately if there was that infrastructure in place?
Through the chair, I don't believe currently there's any provisions for that, and it depends where this lane is in proximate to the Ocean Way, and we've previously discussed the issues with having it adjacent to the Ocean Way and those movements across the Ocean Way between playgrounds and the beachfront.
Sorry, through the chair as well. I don't believe that is defined in our local law at the moment either.
Councillor Martin.
Thanks, Chair. I was just interested in not just Ocean Way as a linear stretch, but when it comes into contact with high activity, or like, Palm Beach Parklands, it interacts with a playground. Do we have a mechanism now that is like a go slow zone that we can implement?
Yeah, through the chair. So the Pathway Safety Toolkit, we've got some signage and line markings. We've got the, similar to the speed awareness devices, a rotating sign that we can put up there to as people come through to say slow down. So yeah, definitely.
Councillor Martin.
Thank you. And, I would echo some of those comments about high speed bike users or e-bike users. But having seen some other places, even up in Cairns, I was watching the dedicated cycle lanes. It's very fast, and if you've got kids on bikes that want to go slow, they almost can't. They can't go on that. So I get it's really complex, but it's the very few that ruin it for everyone. And I know as the Ocean Way areas, some of the elderly and young kids, there's a real risk there. So I get this is a really challenging space.
Councillor Duran.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to query some of the traffic survey data on the Ocean Way. On page 17, it sort of has a table, and one of the percentage increases is in Broadbeach, and it's 1,871% increase in e-bike traffic. Did that also count whether or not that's new bike traffic, or there's been a reduction in traditional bike use to compensate for that increase, that significant increase?
Through the chair. Yeah, thanks very much for that question there. So the way the survey was conducted was using video survey, and in 2021 we picked up all sorts of different devices that are on the footpath, whether they be the analogue bike or the electronic bike or PMD. And similarly, in 2025, this is what we picked up as well. But for the purpose of this report, what we did do is report solely on e-bikes and PMDs.
Thank you. Just to clarify, anecdotally, based on your observations, Sonny, do you think that the increase has also seen a decrease in traditional bikes, or we've just seen an increase of the 1,871 just being new e-bikes on top of the existing bike use? What would you suggest based on your expertise?
I think anecdotally, it's an increase with the e-bikes. There might be the same volumes of traditional bicycles, but if we look at high schools that we visited, there's clear evidence that the uptake of e-bikes is quite extraordinary, and that's where we're seeing the increase quite markedly.
Just one last question, Chair. On the same page, there's statistics provided around and it says from DTMR, Crash Analytics Reporting System compiles data hospital. Is that the information? I do want to call out one of them, which says an 81 hospitalisation crashes were reported, with a 650% increase in e-bike crashes and 260% increase in PMD crashes. Is that data Gold Coast specific? Because it doesn't say whether, or is that Queensland?
Through the chair, thanks very much for that question, Councillor. It is all specifically Gold Coast data.
Well, thank you. Thanks, Chair.
There's no more questions. I'm happy to move the recommendation. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Young. Anyone want to speak for the motion? Anyone want to speak against? I'm happy to close. I think this data is really important. I think since 2001, COVID came along. We've got a lot more people in our city now. There's a cost of living crisis, and we know that people are looking different forms and ways of getting around our city. So from the 4 or 5 years I've been here, there's been a different shift in relation to how people get around the city, and I think the availability of a lot of these devices is a lot more available. So it's something that I think we've all in this chamber's had a negative experience for a long period of time, and I think now the data is showing how much of an increase these devices are causing for our residents, and I think we're really really looking forward to the inquiry and the results of that. I think it's 3 levels of government that are involved in this. It's important that any importers, we ensure that whatever gets imported to our country is meeting, I would say, the local regulations, whether it's state legislations. I believe there needs to be a full review, which is happening at state level in relation to age, devices, how we can enforce these different devices, whether it's registration or not. And then I think as a city, we need to start understanding how these devices get around our cities as well. So I think this body of work highlights the change and shift in transport mode. I think it's important that we understand what state government findings come out of it, and it's really important then as a city we continue to look at alternative ways that these devices can be used in our city. It's my belief that there's going to be more as we continue, so these numbers, I believe, will increase. So this report really starts highlighting that we need to really consider this moving forward in relation to our traffic and transport and active travel in our city. So, question?
It's a good report, and I note that the officers have submitted or made a submission to the state government's inquiry. I wonder if we should be providing that to our local members of parliament so they're aware of our take on it. Do you want to include that in your motion, or
are we happy?
Or
Just close debate.
Well, it's never too late.
I think we'll take it on notice.
EGM can just take it on notice.
Yeah, perfect. I'll put the motion to you.
Thank you.
All in favour? Gary.
That's in public now.
6.3 proposed master plan for Firth Park. Presented, we've got. Thank you, team. Thank you, Councillor Castro.
I know. Publicly. Yes, that's. I'm going to seek a ruling from the chair.
So we've got
about
Chris
your
Bolton,
behaviour.
Ross McCauley.
Yeah, straight to it.
Yep. Thank you, Chris, for the presentation. Thank you.
Okay, through the chair. Good afternoon, councillors. Thank you for having me along this afternoon to present this report. My name is Chris Bolton. I'm the City's Specialist Community Infrastructure Planner. I'd just like to start by noting that I haven't had the privilege to lead this project, which has been delivered over quite a period of 5 years or so. So I have Tim Widdowson, our Recreation Services leader, on hand to assist us with any questions if and as we need. Okay, so the proposed master plan for Firth Park Mudgeeraba. There's 3 parts to this presentation. The background, really the reasons why we have done a master plan, what the master plan looks and includes, and then one of the most important parts is the implementation plan. So for some of you may know, but this park began its life as a 15-hectare parcel as a district sports park in Mudgeeraba, and about 5 years ago it was expanded with the acquisition of another 54 hectares, stretching out to the east towards the Pacific Motorway. So that now gives us a park that is in the order of 69 hectares, and that acquisition was one of 3 key reasons that the master plan was developed. The other reasons being there was the imminent expansion of the netball facility, which is almost complete, which helps to address some of the constraints locally with southern sports park needs. And then the third reason was, at that time, the city was needing to investigate site capacity for a new high-performance centre for sport. And it's important to note that there's really 3 key drivers with this master plan that have been heavily influenced the outcome, and that is the hydraulic and stormwater constraints, the traffic management, and the ecological constraints, but really opportunities as well. So 3 big considerations that has required quite a degree of detailed investigation and studies over the time. And it's also worth noting that based on the presentation I gave at the last Transport and Infrastructure Committee last month, our methodology for how we approach master plans and the timing and prioritisation, if you apply that thinking to this master plan, it is somewhat ahead of schedule, but that's all the benefits of hindsight. So just worth noting that as well. So some of the background, Firth Park services a large portion of the community. It services a statistical local area of Mudgeeraba Tallabudra, as well as 3 SA2s. It's classified as a district sports park. However, with the expansion and the future enhancements that the master plan proposes, it's most likely would be reclassified as a city sports park, depending on how our open space strategic planning pans out. The park, ultimately will assist with the provision of sports in the southern catchment that has many challenges. But given that there will still be a deficit of district sports park by 2046. So just in terms of its current use and background, there are multiple outdoor facilities, some community services and recreational facilities. And at the moment, based on the club membership, the data that our sports and rec team have provided, the use of those facilities are already at capacity, and that will continue to be exacerbated into the future with more population.
Councillor Tozer.
So on the previous slide, you talked about it being ahead of schedule, and this slide talks about every single sport being above capacity. Help me understand the difference between those 2 things.
So through the chair, the land acquisition and the master planning, based on the planning that was done for LGIP 2, so back 5 years ago.
Yes.
That was saying the projections were probably less than what they are. Whereas this data you can see in front of us on that chart shows the actual memberships.
Yeah. So is it fair to say that whilst when we embarked on this project it might have been ahead of schedule, but given the capacity of the current sporting clubs all being over 100%, maybe it's not ahead of schedule, maybe it's actually needed? Is that a fair comment, or am I... Maybe that's a question through you to Ross.
Yep.
So through the chair, this is a similar challenge that we are having in the entire central portion of the city.
Good point.
The central, and if you look at where population growth is projected to increase more so than other areas, our current planning sees other investments in expansion of sporting facilities more closer to those catchments before this one. We still need to do this, but probably just not as urgent as some of the other investments we have planned.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so The site was secured to support the expansion of the existing sports facilities, as well as its opportunity to provide for new offerings. So this table is taken from the report, but you can see that it describes the limitations of netball pre the current project of expansion, rugby league, bowls and diamond sports, and then the opportunities offered by the expansion of this site and how the master plan could respond, as well as the opportunity to introduce new offerings, which would be AFL and cricket. So, like our current master plans, the first step is usually consultation, so understanding the site, its use, and what the opportunities are. So the consultants undertook extensive consultation with existing users through different methods, including a survey, interviews and workshops. And that was focused on the existing users as well as the potential users, and those being formal and informal users. And the boxes you can see at the bottom illustrating the outcomes and the different thoughts from the community about what the opportunities were. It really demonstrates the demand for upgraded facilities, expansion and new sport offerings for sport and recreation, as well as informal and formal use. So in response to that, the master plan is really built from a number of layers, three specifically. One is all about the facilities, so how do we provide those facilities, in what configuration, based on the site constraints. Another key consideration is the circulation, being such a large site. There's the pedestrian and cycle circulation, introducing new pathways, also vehicular circulation and car parking as a key consideration for district and city sports parks, where there is such a high demand for accessing facilities as competitions start up and conclude. And then the third part, which I'll get to shortly, is the environmental attributes. So they're kind of the three layers that sort of build and become the master plan. So in understanding those environmental constraints that I alluded to a second ago, there's extensive reporting and investigations were done over the last few years to really understand the flood modelling, the stormwater assessment, as well as the ecological attributes of the site, which are obviously tied to flooding and stormwater when you start excavating, and then of course the traffic assessment. So as I mentioned, the layering up those three considerations of facilities, circulation and environment, you then end up with the final master plan. So you're starting to see that on this slide. But what is really important to note from this slide is that there are multiple layers of legislative assessment to be still required due to the earthworks and the projected net environmental benefits. So this slide illustrates that this is achievable. However, there's still significant gates to get through with the different approvals that go with major earthworks and disturbance around a waterway. But I think the good news story for this slide is that overall there will be a net environmental benefit. So it will go from one type of habitat to a park that will exhibit 4 different types of habitat. So that hence the net environmental gain. And then, as I mentioned, this is the final master plan. There are a lot of numbers on that slide, but if you see page 85 of the report, it will tell you what each of those numbers represents. But importantly, I think if you look at the white dotted line across the site, really everything to the left of that was the original Firth Park, and everything to the right is the expanded park. So the acquisition now offers enormous potential for expansion and introducing of new offerings, as I mentioned, specifically the AFL and cricket ovals, as well as a sizable part of that improvement and enhancement is the environmental quality. So, which was you saw on the last slide the different types of habitats that would be introduced, as well as the stormwater detention and environmental improvement. And what that picture also shows is represented in this table. So really, the first column there lists, what facilities are there on the plan. The next column is what's there now. So you can see it's a very limited provision that is represented by the site status as a district sports park. However, in the last column, you'll see it's significantly enhanced and additional sports facilities, as well as active travel and other recreation facilities, plus the environmental gains. So a huge benefit. The implementation plan is very high level, but it really looks at what are the current renewal works, considers the key milestones needed to bring the vision to life, and how the sequencing of projects needs to be staged in order to reflect the asset condition, facility improvements, lease arrangements to a degree, and safety. So there's no years associated to this or budgets, because that still needs to be calculated, and really the timing depends on funding, as most master plans rely. But phase one is really about working our way through the planning approvals to manage the site identified constraints for the expanded site area, finalising the Somerset Drive connections, starting to introduce those pedestrian connections and car parking areas, improving the baseball and rugby league lighting, and getting started with the skate facility upgrade and introduction of a pump track. And then once those works are done, the bulk of the works is then really dependent on the bulk earthworks, because it's about creating all the platforms for the new facilities, and that needs to be done in a sequential manner across towards the creek. And that's the master plan for Firth Park.
Councillor Young. Repeat. I missed that.
Thanks, Chair. I just wondered, what is that site just to the south of the park? It's outside of the boundary, but it looks like a cricket oval or something.
It's Somerset Park.
Through the chair, if you like. It's called Darcy Doyle Park, and it's used for lower grades of cricket. It's just
so
a single.
It's not part of this. It couldn't be incorporated into the whole master plan.
It wasn't. It's not known as Firth Park, so it's known as a separate park. It's not. It hasn't been considered suitable to include in, just because it's separated by a creek. It's also where Darcy. You can see the pitch there. It's called Darcy Doyle Park, but it does have lower grades of cricket and junior cricket from time to time.
Well, it just seems, if you don't mind debate, Chair, it just seems common sense that you might incorporate it in the whole master plan. It still can be called Darcy Doyle Oval or whatever, like we've done with the Oval in Robina recently. And just might offer an opportunity to recover a bit more environmental space. I don't know.
Yeah,
if it's just worth it.
There's. It's a good point. We have connections proposed to cross the creek and to improve active travel connections. That park also suffers the same challenges as in terms of flooding, so it's very low, and we didn't contemplate modifications or improved resilience to that site as part of the modelling. That being said, it's certainly part of a precinct, and we could certainly look at including wayfinding and the like, so it makes it all seem more contiguous to the users of the area.
And there may be some environmental benefit you can gain through that evaluation. Thanks, Chair. I'll just leave that with the officers to contemplate.
Do we have any more questions, Councillor Martin?
Thanks, Chair. Just a question. I know that parking will increase with the ultimate state, but just whether you're comfortable with that being sufficient because it's obviously going to service the big catchment. Is there enough parking in the ultimate state for the facilities?
So through the chair, the parking's always a challenge in every single sports park we have. typically at very acute times of the day on weekends, but other than those particular times, they're pretty empty. The amount of car parking we're providing is consistent with what we would require in the city plan. That being said, we really want to focus on some of those active travel connections, particularly into Robina, which there is a somewhat of a path already there, which just requires a bridge crossing of the creek, which will significantly enhance sort of the ability of a catchment over the eastern side of the highway to get to the park via a non-vehicular way. But other than that, yes, all the car parking's we think sufficient for what we've prepared here.
Do we have any more questions? Would you like to move this, Councillor Tozer?
Yeah, I'd love to.
I'm happy to second it. Would you like to?
Sorry. Look, this has been a long time coming, and in late 2019, early 2020, when we opportunistically picked up this site, it was pretty exciting to the community to see, what is already a really busy park be augmented with some opportunity for growth. There's lots of clubs in Mudgeeraba and families in Mudgeeraba that Firth Park is their weekend home. But it's not just about that. Like, we have clubs from Busy Park and Burleigh. We have clubs from Talabudra. We have clubs from Robina and Varsity, and we also have clubs like Nerang, and we even have clubs regularly come from all over the state for state age championships and large sporting events, particularly relating to netball. And it's pretty exciting. Even like Gold Coast Rugby League often stage non-Mudgeeraba matches at the rugby league. Firth Park has become a place where people come to play sport. It's so centrally located on the coast. It's right on the M1. So, as long as you can get on the M1, you can basically come to this park from anywhere in the city. Whilst this has all been, initially divisionally funded, with the exception of $50,000 that I'm really grateful that the Office of the Mayor allocated to help, plan some of the high performance training centre piece. It's been really great to see it. As we've done the studies, it transform in the eyes of the officers from just a local kind of place where Mudgeeraba people play netball and rugby league to a park where people can access it from wherever they are in the city and, have a variety of different sports being played. I do want to mention that car parking. Initially, I still am a bit concerned that there isn't enough car parking in the plan, but I also feel confident that the officers are very aware that there's a bit of green space and some space that's near roads that has the capacity to deliver asphalt car parks if we so choose down the track. And as we adopt the master plan and go through that process of identifying clearly this is kind of the vision we have, then there'll be opportunities down the track for us to kind of refine the plan. It's stimulated a lot of interest in the community. There's obviously been different organisations at different times who have said they wouldn't mind locating themselves there. And obviously clubs that want to do that, but also, as we approach the Olympics, there'll, potentially be other outlets that are interested in helping us deliver this. And, I hope that as we adopt the master plan, maybe we attract the attention of someone who wants to share some sort of funding agreement with us to accelerate development, which I'm pretty excited about. I'll leave it at that for opening remarks. If anyone wants to say any more than they can.
Thank you. And does anyone want to speak against more open sporting space in our city?
Oh, well played.
Well, I'll put the motion to you. All in favour? Carry.
Touchdown.
Thank you, Chris. So 6.4, Robina Transport Planning, Synopsis, Nick Presser.
Chairman, when you're ready,
Councillor.
I've agreed to present a change for Councillor Doran. If you wouldn't mind, I'll put that forward when you're ready.
Yep.
Thank you, Chair. This agenda item relates to Robina Transport Planning Synopsis. So the purpose of the report is to provide an overview of the current transport planning considerations for Robina. It's to serve as a public record, support further state advocacy and collaboration, inform further detailed planning, and to guide external communications. So the background, locational context, everyone knows where Robina is. Robina is located in central south Gold Coast. It's one of the first and largest master planned communities in Australia, first initiated back in the late 1980s. In 1992, there was special state legislation established to govern land use planning and development in the Robina Central area. So you can see there on the map, that's that blue shaded area. And the intent was to establish a business centre. Shaping SEQ, which is the state government's regional land use, housing supply strategy, depicts Robina as a principal regional activity centre. So it's in the hierarchy of centres, it is right near the top. There's a suite of state facilities located in Robina, including a public hospital, large public hospital, stadium, technical college and schools. The Queensland Investment Corporation, which is the state government's development entity, owns the Robina Town Shopping Centre, and also a number of vacant land parcels in the area. There's also a number of other major facilities, Bond University being the big one. There's also a large bulky goods and retail and car sales precinct, a number of office towers and several golf courses. So in terms of traffic, so Robina is probably a little bit of a victim of its own success. It attracts visitors from afar. It attracts visitors from across the Gold Coast. It attracts visitors from Logan and Brisbane, and also people coming up from the Tweed. And due to this success is probably due to its being central, it's highly accessible, and all the facilities that are located in Robina. But obviously with this popularity, there's been a major increase in traffic demand over the last 20 years, to a point now where motorists are really experiencing unacceptable delays during peak hours. And primarily those traffic congestion hotspots are on Robina Town Centre Drive on the approach to the Pacific Highway M1 exit 79, as well as congestion on Robina Parkway and Somerset Drive on the approach to M1 exit 82. And there's a number of reasons that are all interconnecting that has caused this traffic congestion. As I mentioned before, the wide appeal. So because we've got people coming from afar to go to Robina, their really only choice they have is to use their car. And of course, ample free parking also generates that traffic. Just through urban growth in Robina, urban growth generally across the Gold Coast has contributed. An important one is an efficient road network design. So when this was first designed back in the late 80s, early 90s, it was never envisaged that it would be so popular. What we have now is we've got the road network, the major road network, running through the core of the town centre, not around it. What's happening there is we've got through traffic mixing with local traffic. We've also got traffic that travels from one side of the M1 to the other. So we've got three types of traffic, all mixing with each other, or going into two interchanges. We've also got, which was trendy at the time, the 1990s, a whole heap of roundabouts. Roundabouts are great. They work fine most of the time. In non-peak times, they work fantastically well. But as traffic increases, roundabouts run out of capacity really, really quick, particularly in peak hours when you've got a high right turn movements. Dual lane roundabouts are also very, very difficult for pedestrians and cyclists to negotiate, and they cause safety problems for vulnerable road users. And not so much anymore, but between Robina Station and Varsity Lake Station, there used to be a fare boundary. So if you caught the train from Varsity Lakes to Brisbane, it would cost you more. It would cost you $40 a week more than if you caught the train from Robina to Brisbane. So $40 a week is a lot of money. So people were living in the southern suburbs, instead of going to the park and ride at Varsity Lakes, they're going to the park and ride at Robina, which also was causing a lot of traffic congestion. That issue is not so much now. We've got the 50-cent default public transport fares, so that factor has sort of gone away. So over the years, the interchanges that service Robina, you can see there by the aerial photos, have progressively been upgraded. So this is exit 79. You can see the last upgrade there was undertaken in 2011. And this is exit 81. So you can see there back in the 80s, how it's progressed over time. And there was a significant upgrade that occurred in 2012, 2013, that changed the interchange there from roundabouts to traffic signals, and a big upgrade to the overpass at that interchange. Back in 2019, Council endorsed the Robina Road Network Strategy 2041, and the endorsement came with informing the development of the LGIP, Local Government Infrastructure Plan, as well as a future 10-year CapEx program. So the strategy was prepared using our citywide traffic model. And we identified that as part of developing that, all the road upgrades that we could do, you can see the list there, could not fully manage 2041 demand without any incremental mode shift to public transport. So to make our model work, we had to actually strip 15% of trips from the model to get it to work. But you can see there by the table, they're the road network projects that were identified in the strategy, possibly more than $1 billion worth of investment. We've got 3 interchange upgrades, significant upgrades to a number of state roads. But as you can see there, with some of the blue projects, they've been undertaken, and those highlighted in pink are really interdependent on state upgrading exit 82. The Merrimack to Robina Link Road concept. So back in 2007, as part of the development of the then priority infrastructure plan for the city, a concept was conceived to provide a new northern access route from Gooding Drive through to Stadium Drive across the floodplain. And the reason for that was to provide an alternative access into and out of the town centre. But recent investigations have indicated that this is not a viable proposition. High cost and complexity. It will require a 1.5 kilometre elevated structure, so basically a bridge, across a significant floodplain. And the reason for that is flood immunity. So being a major road, it had to have quite good flood immunity. We also needed to make sure that it wasn't going to be causing upstream flooding. So it pretty much has to be on a bridge for 1.5 kilometres. The geomorphology through the floodplain there indicates as highly unstable soils. So to get a major road put in there that's on a structure would require extensive preloading. So that's when you go in and really compact the soils to make sure that there's a firm, solid foundation. And the piling would have had to have gone very, very deep to be able to get the engineering structural integrity of the bridge. So because of those factors, the order of cost would have been greater than $200 million to construct that road. Our traffic modelling indicates that it really does not provide really much traffic benefit. It would, by 2041, it's forecasted to carry less than 10,000 vehicles a day. So for a major road, that's not a lot. And then we did a scenario test and said, well, without the road, what would happen? And those 10,000 vehicles a day dispersed to other roads, such as Robina Parkway, M1, Highfields Drive, without pushing those roads over capacity to make additional lanes required on those roads. So based on the high cost and complexity, minimal traffic benefits, as well as the parklands impact. As we know, this is the site for Green Hut Parklands. It's our premium open space facility that we're planning, and punching a major road through Green Hut Parklands would impact on not only the visual amenity, but the recreational quality, because the road would have to be higher than the parklands. You would see the road going over the top. So amenity impacts as well. So the way forward, we're proposing not to pursue the concept any further, But what we'll do is we'll make sure that the Greenheart access roads are designed for low-speed egress to manage traffic after major events. So it will be used as a relief valve when there's a large event on at the parklands, a concert or a festival, or there's a major event on at the stadium. Bollards can be removed, traffic management can be put in place, and it can be used as a relief valve to getting people out of those events. Just recently, we undertook a study, the Robina Town Centre Gateway study, and it was resolved by Council in 2021 to undertake that study. It looked at 5 intersections that provided access into and out of the town centre. We really need to do this study using a finer grain traffic model to be able to really determine turning movements and things like that a strategic model can't do. We collected a lot of data, and one interesting thing we found was 35% of traffic on that dotted route there, which is Robina Town Centre Drive, Laver Drive, Cheltenham Drive, is through traffic. So we've got traffic travelling from Robina Parkway through to the M1, travelling through the town centre, which is causing a lot of that traffic congestion. And the reason for that is they're avoiding the congestion at exit 82. So if we can get a lot of that through traffic out of the town centre, it's really going to help us manage the traffic, improve things for pedestrians and cyclists, and just make it a much more amenable area. I'll quickly go through some of the intersections, but the key one here is Robina Parkway, Laver Drive, and the study identified that to upgrade that roundabout, it really needs exit 82 to be upgraded at the same time. So if we were to go and invest a significant amount of money to upgrade that intersection, it would actually get people to the back of the queue quicker at exit 82, just because of its proximity. So as a standalone initiative, motorist travel times won't improve. So it's really interdependent on some works happening at exit 82. Robina Town Centre Drive, Laver Drive, we recently converted the roundabout to traffic signals. Just a little bit of a story there. The analysis that we undertook, you can see the diagram there on the left. That's the intersection that we would have liked to have provided, but because that impacted on an office tower, it impacted on the railway bridge, we really had to bring down the configuration of the intersection. The primary objective of those works was to improve pedestrian safety. It's a high pedestrian route from the stadium, walking into the town centre, from the train station, walking into the town centre. We've got hundreds of pedestrians that walk through that intersection every day. So the primary objective was to improve things for pedestrians, as well as signalise the intersection. You have much better control in terms of the timing and being able to muck around with the timing and phasing. But we would have liked to have provided a much better, bigger intersection. So what we've actually provided there, our analysis indicates that the capacity will not be there past 2031 without removing that through traffic I talked about before. Some other intersections we looked at, Baybury Lane intersection, our modelling indicates that it will have sufficient capacity to 2041. Laver Drive, Cheltenham Drive would benefit from signals, either as a full signalised intersection or signalising some legs with pedestrian signals to improve connectivity to the stadium. And then the intersection of Robina Parkway, Cheltenham Drive, we did do some capacity upgrades to that in 2016. Our modelling indicates that it will have sufficient capacity out to 2041. There are some tweaks we can do to the intersection in terms of phasing, in terms of lane redesignation, and that will help us avoid large-scale civil works, property acquisitions and road user disruption to that intersection. Robina Walking Network Plan. So all journeys start and finish with a walking trip. Even if you take your car, you've got to walk to your car, you've got to walk from your car to your destination. So as part of the Queensland Government's walking strategy, or Queensland Walking Strategy, they developed an initiative called Walking Network Plans. So we've currently conducted 2 walking network plans, one for Robina, one for Southport. And the one for Robina, you can see there, it identified 20 priority projects. And you'll see those projects in the report. And we're currently going through those projects and prioritising them based on the TOSA algorithm, and we will be then putting them into a prioritised list that gives us best bang for our buck, and then undertaking more detailed planning on those routes. We're also establishing what we call a walkable centres sub-program within the active transport CapEx program to really hypothecate those projects and designate the funding to really uplift good walking journeys in our activity centres. We'll also soon be developing walking network plans for Burleigh, Coolangatta and Mudgeeraba. You can see there recent investment. So the city has invested significant amount of funds in Robina over the last 10 years. I'm not going to go through the details, but there's a lot that we have done, and you can see the ones there in blue, some that are currently programmed, and we'll be delivering those in the next couple of years. Just some examples. We've metered the roundabout there at Robina Parkway, Laver Drive. We've put pedestrian signals at 3 intersections at the roundabout at Robina Town Centre Drive, Scottsdale Drive. As I mentioned before, we've upgraded the Robina Town Centre Drive, Laver Drive intersection with traffic signals, and we have done a suite of bus stop upgrades right across the suburb. So, as part of undertaking the Robina Town Centre Gateway study, we looked at are there any what we call intermediate solutions that we can do that will address current traffic congestion that are lower cost. I say lower, I don't say low. So we ran a whole heap of scenario tests using a model. So you can see there on the map, we've got an A to a B. So that's the two screen lines that we used. How long does it take to go from A to B? How long does it take to go from B to A? And with a whole heap of scenarios. So the first one was do nothing. The second one was adding a southbound lane onto the exit 82 overpass. The third one was signalising Robina Parkway, Laver Drive. Fourth one was grade separating Robina Parkway, Laver Drive. You can see the concepts there. And the last one was a new southern M1 overpass.
Yes, Councillor Gates.
Thanks, Chairman. Through you to Mr. Prasser. I'm having a little trouble recognising the LGIP details on page 163, with this slide. Can you, that number 3, the new overpass, that doesn't form part of our current LGIP?
Sorry, through the chair. Which one, Councillor Gates?
3. New Southern M1.
Yes, so that is currently not included in the current LGIP.
Where did that come from?
This study that we've done.
So it's just an idea.
It's a new concept.
Okay.
All right. So, sorry, through the chair. You might recall when I mentioned with Robina, we've got 3 types of traffic. We've got traffic that travels from the coastal corridor through to the M1. We've got traffic travelling from all around the area region going to Robina. Then we've got a lot of school traffic that travels from one side to the other. We've got three big schools over at Mudgeeraba. We've got Somerset College, Hillcrest, Kings. We've also got the largest high school at Varsity Lakes, largest high school in the Gold Coast. So we've got a lot of that school traffic. So peak hour, we all know school, before and after school, peak hour. So we're mixing all those 3 traffic. The only way they can get across is through exit 82 or exit 85. What we're saying is, how about we look at putting in an overpass, similar to Road G up at Coomera, okay? This is the whole thing we've got.
Yeah, but that's been planned for 20 years.
You've got to start somewhere.
It wasn't just an idea.
It was. But we have this issue all the way down the M1 where we've got east-west traffic movements sucking up the capacity of interchanges.
So have there been discussions with the state about this?
Not at this point in time.
No. So are we able to do it land-wise? Do we own the land?
I'll get onto that in my presentation.
Okay. And the other, all right, I'll save that one. But the other thing I'm interested in, the Robina Parkway and Laver Drive situation, there's two things. There's the upgrade with signals and the grade separation. What does the grade separation involve?
Through the chair, you can see the concept 2B there.
Yep.
It's actually putting the movement that goes from the M1 over the top of the existing roundabout onto Robina Parkway. So grade separation is putting something over the top.
Okay. Right. And the additional southbound lane, where does that come from? Can you show me on the map? Over here, is it?
Yeah, so where it says 1.
Yeah.
So basically from the roundabout, from Robina Parkway and Laver Drive, across the M1, of putting in another additional southbound lane, so going from that way to help free up some of the capacity of the interchange.
Would that be a service road?
No, it's just an additional lane.
Extra lane on the M1?
No, on the overpass.
Oh, I see. Okay, thank you.
You can also see there with scenario 4, it's a combination of the additional southbound lane and signalising the Robina Parkway Laver Drive intersection, and scenario 5 is undertaking those two plus the overpass. So in terms of what this does to the network, and this is in 2031, so this is a model for 2031, AM peak time. So it doesn't really do much to northbound movement, so going from A to B. But you can see there, in the mornings, going from B to A, that does provide some travel time savings. The additional southbound lane does drop travel time by a minute, but when you combine that with signalising the roundabout, it drops that. It really drops that down 4.5 minutes. So really a significant drop there, probably a 50% travel time saving, and you get even more bang for your buck if you add in the overpass because you're not mixing that school traffic with all the other traffic. Next slide is even more apparent. So you can see there, PM peak is where we really have the problems. We've got people coming down Robina Parkway trying to get onto the M1 and queuing back. So what it's saying there is southbound. If you just put in the extra lane on the overpass, you reduce travel time savings from 15 minutes down to just over 8 minutes. You can see the grade separation does provide some benefits. Unfortunately, our analysis also indicated that if you do grades separate the intersection, it may actually start introducing some safety problems because you'll have people coming over on the overpass and then weaving, what we call weaving in traffic engineering speak, and not getting in the right lane, and then people weaving across, causing probably more congestion. But our model doesn't pick that up. Then you can see with scenario 4, so just the overpass itself, not just number 3 there, it doesn't make any difference. But when you combine it with the others, number 5, it really drops it down from 15 minutes to 6 minutes. If you just do the overpass and the signals, it drops it down to just 7 minutes. So that's what our modelling's telling us. So the key findings, obviously PM's much worse than the AM. It's also showing that M1 exit A2 capacity enhancements are essential. Grade separating Robina Parkway Laver Drive is really, it will pose some risks that we would have to look at. But the most effective solution is scenario 5, so combining all 3. They could be staged, and really, if we can get all those 3 connections in, what it will do, if you cast your mind back to the 35% of traffic through traffic, it will then start taking some of that through traffic away from Robina Town Centre Drive, which is causing the congestion at the other interchange, 79, and it will help with that as well. So what we're proposing here is to go away and do some more detailed planning of the 3 scenarios. So at the moment, all it is network planning, so modelling. We need to take this to the next phase, which is what we call our P3M phase 2, do some options assessment. We also need to liaise with the federal and state agencies. the overpass, it crosses the M1, it crosses the railway line, so we definitely need to liaise with them. But we've also got to understand that doing these works provides a solution for the state. So the state have a part to play in this. So we're going to go away and do the options assessment, some prelim design, some economic appraisal. Can it be constructed? Can it be staged? And what funding partnerships are out there that we can leverage? Robina Central Planning Review. So this is a review that's being undertaken by City Planning Branch. You've had a suite of reports to the Planning and Regulation Committee about this. So it's currently appraising what is the best land use planning instrument for Robina Central, its vision and its zonings. So the plan is to continue growth in the Robina area beyond the Robina agreement, so beyond that legislation. So early phases of this bit of work identified that the growth will require obviously a new land use plan, but also require an infrastructure strategy. But given Robina's status as a principal regional activity centre, with excellent access to services, public transport and jobs, it really is a logical location to uplift land use and help us align our growth targets identified in shaping SEQ. So to support continued growth in Robina, significant transport investment is required. So the intermediate solution I talked about before, that's going to address current traffic congestion. But if you're looking into the future, with growth, continued growth happening across the city, particularly in Robina, we've identified that even with a suite of road network upgrades identified in that strategy, our modelling shows it won't handle the full demand. A multimodal approach is really essential, with the heavy lifting being done by public transport. So in November 23, Council resolved for the Mayor to write to the Minister, requesting to prepare and execute a comprehensive multimodal transport plan for Robina. The Minister responded in April 24, declining the partnership.
So, yeah, was that the previous Labor government?
Yeah. Yep. So the longer term solutions, as I mentioned before, intermediate solution will address current congestion. Multimodal is critical. No single solution is enough on its own. So there will need to be road network upgrades, but there'll also need to be a whole heap of other complementary initiatives over the next 2 decades. Enhance the transport capacity to really reduce those single occupant car use trips for peak hours, particularly white collar and education trips. And we really need to give travellers better options. And that's obviously will all be part of our new transport strategy that we're developing. And it's all outlined in the local growth management strategy. And that table there shows a suite of initiatives that can be considered as part of that. State engagement. So despite ongoing engagement with the state, we haven't received any commitment from Department of Transport and Main Roads. So the department's current focus is easing congestion on the M1 in the northern Gold Coast. We all know how bad it is, and that congestion is actually happening on the M1 itself. It's very dangerous. So you might cast your mind back to November last year when I presented on the transport priorities for the city. We have 3 traffic congestion hotspots. We've got the far north, the north, and Robina. Okay, the state are focusing on the far north with exit 38, 45. They've recently upgraded 41. We've got the north, so Pimpama and Coomera, they've recently upgraded 49. We are working with them in partnership on what we're doing with exit 54. They've now got some money to do some design to extend Coomera Connector up to Pimpama, and they're spending $3.5 billion on the Coomera Connector Stage 1. What we need to do is we also need to have a focus on Robina. So really, the traffic congestion that is occurring in Robina are all on city roads, but they are as a result of exits 79 and 82 being under capacity. But because we don't have that congestion happening on the M1 itself, their focus is in the north. So when we have engaged with the Department of Transport and Main Roads, their senior leadership have actually given us some really good advice and said, look, you should start engaging with the Department of State Development, Infrastructure and Planning, okay? They're responsible for shaping SEQ. they were also responsible for recent other decisions. They were responsible for activating economic development opportunities and sequencing state investment priorities. Because we've got so many state facilities in Robina, we've got a stadium, a train station, a hospital, a town centre that they own. Okay, large high schools, the state have a part to play in the future of Robina's transport system. That concludes my presentation.
So, Nick, could I, excuse me, Nick, question is, if they did the upgrade of exit 82, I believe it is, that state government, what
exit,
and was it, is it 82?
Yeah.
Yeah. If that was done by state government, what immediate impact would it have for our roads at the moment? And the second part of the question is, obviously what we're looking at is a short-term improvement. Would that also be a longer term with both of them in partnership together?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So they need an immediate solution, as I mentioned before. It's to address current traffic congestion. It will probably give you a 10-year life. What we're proposing there at exit 82 is an additional lane. We're not proposing a full-blown upgrade to the interchange. A full-blown upgrade to the interchange is going to cost hundreds of millions of dollars. We're looking at a solution that is lower cost. Yes, a new overpass to the south is going to cost a bit, but can we get something in that is going to be low cost, that we can implement, that we can do in partnership quite quickly with the state without over-investing and hundreds of millions and having to really wait many years to get that work done. So it's really just freeing up an additional lane capacity on the overpass.
Councillor Young, sorry.
I was just going to suggest that big green space at the top of that picture looks really good for a big interchange if you weren't using it for a goose. But
there's a sports facility going on there.
I know, I'm just playing. Thanks, Chairman. I don't have a question. I was just going to comment on how good it is to see the recognition of the Robina planning study and how instrumental that might be in the ultimate outcomes here. Thanks.
Councillor Gates.
I thought that Mr. Cressy was going to come back to my question about the new overpass, and my question was, at the time, the land, is it our land either side of the M1, and is it just connecting to two local roads which might not be an appetite for the state government to contribute to the construction of such an overpass?
Can we move to close to answer that question? Do we need to? Well, my understanding is that there's commercial land involved and there's probably budget implications involved. But if you don't believe you need to, then it's great. But the question is quite specific.
My question was, is it our land?
We'll go into close. Can we bring up the options we've got there?
I'm happy to move to close if you like.
So you're thinking of commercial?
I think that the issue is that we're about to talk about potential commercial land. We're also talking about implications of the city budget. And we're going to talk about specifically, potentially of the LGIP. There was a related question about whether it was funded in the LGIP,
so
all of which is confidential.
So I think we've got some wording previously about commercial,
so it's commercial and budget
related matters.
Good to go?
Come for that.
Yep. So G and budget, that's probably fine. I'm happy to move that.
Yep, and I'm happy to second it. All in favour? Carry. Close. Streaming off. that were could have affected our budget and commercial opportunities down the track. So we went to close, but now we're back in open. Do we have any more questions in open? Councillor Doran.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for the synopsis. I suspect I've annoyed you enough to receive the synopsis. I guess I want to focus on two elements of it, if I can, through you, Chair. The first one is the Merrimack-Robina connection. I acknowledge the engineering challenges and the cost prohibitive nature of that. I'm wondering whether or not, and it's going to form part of the recommendation change that Councillor Gates puts on my behalf, wondering if there would be any objections from the city to continue to pursue non-transporter roads that can connect from Stadium Drive and from Gilgai Road and potentially out to the Parkway, but not at the flood immunity level that was proposed before, but as localised network, so that it can be considered as part of the Stage 2 master planning, understanding that it's not this team that does the master planning, but if you endorse it, then they might, so that traffic can exit the north of Robina and the south of Gilgai, but also enter the sporting precinct, and then on event days could allow for an easier escape of traffic from the C-bus region.
Through the Chair, we're absolutely committed to the idea of having that. I think Nick used the terminology here, like a relief valve, so that we'll on any event where we're using that, we'll be trying to get people out to the north, and we'll have traffic. If required, we'll have traffic management on the intersections to allow that flow to happen. For a more permanent solution, whether we want that open all the time and it becomes a rat run, that's something that we really want to work through.
I accept that. That. I guess the more permanent solution would be maybe from Stadium Drive to the medium point where you can't continue.
Yep.
But if there is options to investigate whether an internal localised road can then take people to the Parkway, to not encourage the rat running, but to allow for a valve of exit from that busy precinct, where that can be considered as part of the Greenheart Stage 2 planning.
Yes, it can be.
Okay, thank you. And the other question, Chair, in the report it says that the current, I'm paraphrasing, the current experience from motorists around this area is unacceptable, and the changes that have been made have been to accommodate the current network. So there's scenario testing for, say, scenario 4 as an example, which is the signalising and the left lane would address, Nick, I think you just mentioned, I don't want to put words in your mouth, would address the current issues but not the future planning and the future capacity needs. So I guess I want to focus on that because we can't control what the state's going to do. There's been significant advocacy to the state on these issues, and I think what we can do to solve our issues, noting that the graph suggested it would be a 50% reduction in potential AM peak time wait periods, peak periods. How quickly do you think you could assess the potential impacts of scenario 4 and then bring something back to council for endorsement or not thereafter if you did support scenario 4, which for those following along doesn't include the overpass, which is the extra overpass, which is a bigger piece of work. I'm looking for how good can we make some changes to fix it now rather than...
Yeah, through the Chair. So as we recommend in the report that we will now go away and do that more detailed work, feasibility work, prelim design, liaison with the state government.
Sorry, can I just ask, just quickly question, do we need to liaise with the state government on scenario 4 that doesn't involve any overpass work?
Yeah, because it's an additional lane on their own overpass at exit 82.
Oh, the left lane.
It's not. Yeah, it's not just a left lane to head south on the M1.
Yeah.
It's a new lane.
Right.
So we don't know what that looks like. It might be quite a simple line marking exercise. Okay, it might be putting in a pedestrian bridge and then using the current pedestrian facility as a lane.
Yeah, sorry. In my briefing, you painted the picture of more of a line marking exercise or additional road reserve rather than an extra lane. That was where I was heading with that one.
Yeah, so that's what we need to do. Sorry, Chair. That's what we need to do this next bit of work and all the different options that might be available. And that needs to be done in conjunction with the Department of Transport and Roads because it's their asset.
Okay, so I guess the original question is, what sort of timeline do we look? Because it does say in here that between 27 and 31 is in the current LGIP for that, not exit 82, but the Labour Drive Robina Parkway roundabout. Is that an achievable timeline for some sort of signalling or less southbound lane?
Yep. So through the chair, that's what this bit of work will do. Look at different configuration options, economic appraisal, and is it constructible? How much it is? We need to liaise with TMR, get a funding partnership. But I would say that it is possible to meet that time frame for 2031. That's in LGIP. That's 6 years away,
or potentially 2 years away. Thanks.
So is on page.
I don't have any other questions, but I'll.
Do we have any more questions while looking at that? Councillor Martin.
Thanks, Chair. Just interested in the multimodal approach, and I think recently the state talked about a new multimodal study. How will those two multimodal plans, how will it work in the state's plan?
The comments on a multimodal study offer being opening up post cancellation of Light Rail 4. There has been some very early discussions on what that may look like. Those conversations have only really just occurred this week. So in terms of specific detail on what will be committed, other than an opportunity to explore the detail and scope of that study, obviously when you look at our city, we really need to partner with DTMR on all our major transport planning, and they recognise that there is that critical nexus between the city and state network. Obviously, any opportunity to progress a broader transport multimodal study for the city of Gold Coast with DTMR input would be most welcome, but at this point we're still really waiting for a scope.
Thank you. So sort of thanks, Chair, with that in mind, and in the recommendation, I think point 6 talks about the advocacy plan, continued advocacy and through to the state. Just wondering how, could you detail what that advocacy looks like, or would there be an advocacy plan? Just wondering what we would expect to see out of point 6.
I think once we've got the outcomes of the feasibility work, we can understand what we're advocating for. So I think pending the completion of the options assessment, which Nick is proposing we proceed with, I think the outcomes of that phase will actually inform the next steps and how we might engage and advocate if there are viable options.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have any more questions? I'll go to Councillor Gates. You did say you may have a change.
Thanks, Chairman. Can I just ask if... Oh, okay. Yeah, I wanted to be sure that there was... The only thing that needs to change there is in number 3, that word incorporate should be investigate. Thank you. And I'm going to defer to Councillor Doran to open debate on this one.
Do we have a seconder yet? Councillor Marshall, seconder, Councillor Marshall. We'll go to Councillor Doran. Yep.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to Councillor Gates for putting up the change recommendation. I really welcome the report from city officers looking at the future planning for Robina. I know it's not the first one. It has been done before. I'm sure councillors here are probably sick of talking about Robina's transport network. But I think the different part to this report that I think that those who sit in the traffic around Robina will appreciate is that there are shorter term solutions that have been proposed by city officers. I think one of the frustrating parts that I've experienced in my short time here is that the core problem is a state government road, but the effects are local roads. And I accept the expert transport officer's view that there hasn't been much great benefit of fixing the localised network without the core problem being addressed. But I also think that it's been pretty clearly made to us that the state government it's not a priority for them, Exit 82, as it is for us. And so what I really welcome from this report is a focus on what we can do in the meantime that maybe isn't perfect but is still pretty good and will change the experience of people that come through Robina on the Parkway to go to the west, or go to schools on the other side of the west, or go to work, or come to the hospital, or go to the train station. Will have a better experience and will contribute to moving some of that traffic around Robina rather than through Robina. The changes that I've proposed essentially is to accept the city officer's position around the Merrimack to Robina link, that a elevated bridge going through Greenheart is probably not the most ideal situation, and being reasonable rather than fight that and have to have an argument over $200 million worth of costs. Let's accept that position, but also point 3 seeks to, as I asked the officers not too long ago, allow for a council position that we investigate and explore the localised nature of Greenheart's master plan, so that we can have a escape valve for event days, and so that it's a localised network at a reasonable speed but can provide connections to the parkway from the north and the south, but not a through road, so that it's more reasonable in terms of its costings and also provides an outcome as we continue to grow through Robina, which we inevitably will. And number 4 says, well, noting that not all elements of the intermediate plan is available to come to budget. Some of them, if they are available in terms of support from city officers in time for the 26-27 budget, then they do come for us for consideration moving forward. It is specifically relating to those that are achievable within that time frame, and I don't think anyone would, maybe someone will, his hand's just gone up, but I think anyone will object to, if there is a solution available and it is endorsed and it does come for consideration, I don't think that's an objectionable piece. But yeah, just to wrap up, the north gets a lot of attention for transport, and rightly so. It's growing. Robina takes a significant amount of traffic that's not localised and transports it from the coast to the M1 and up and down and to the airport and around to schools and hospitals and to the important attraction agents that are in Robina. So whilst it's a local issue, it's actually affecting people from all over the city. I think that officers have done a lot of work. This is a piece of work that presents a shorter term solution potentially, subject to further investigation, and I think that will be really welcomed by everybody using the network. And I think that we have to probably accept here that we can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, and without a willing partner from the state government to fix Exit 82, the city should look to improve its own network, especially when we can see such a reduction in travel times at peak periods. Thanks.
Councillor Hamill.
Chair, through you to Councillor Gates, what are funding solutions? I haven't seen that terminology used before.
Look, I didn't write this, but I was going to suggest, even though it's my motion, I was going to suggest that Councillor Doran might be happy with a change that says, after Robina, with funding to be considered as part of the 26-27 budget deliberations.
So, Chair, that was going to be my suggested amendment, because we don't endorse things, we consider them in budget review.
Just take out the red that's there, if you wouldn't mind, and say, with funding to be considered as part of the 26-27 budget deliberations. Okay? Oh, go away.
So, Chair, Councillor Gates has picked up exactly where I was going to go, was that I had no problem with the intent, but the words were not the right words. My question now is, I'm actually unsure from the presentation of what, if anything, would be ready to consider before that. So I was just looking for some context from Nick. Would there actually be anything to consider for 26-27, or are we possibly tying ourselves into a knot that we don't need to?
There's a 4-year capital works program.
So I'll hand it to Michael. Do you want to take that?
Certainly, we wouldn't have this next phase finished to feed into the next year's budget process. So it would certainly we could bring a report back next financial year with the outcomes, but it's probably a little premature to try and feed in, a 4-year capital forecast of a solution we actually haven't identified. So my view would be it would be, the ability for Office to bring back a report next financial year with the outcomes and the associated forecast budget requirements for any of those viable options.
So we couldn't put the traffic signals in?
No. I'll pass to Nick.
That roundabout is built over a drain. To signalise that intersection, Robina Parkway, Laver Drive, we're talking lots of money. So it's not just a simple put up sticks signalisation of an intersection. It's very complex to do. So we've got to make sure that any investment that the city makes, it provides the best return on investment, and it's not really, and it's actually going to provide travel time savings. So that's why we need to do this more detailed work.
Okay, so I don't know the area well enough to know whether that would be more valuable than buying a block of land that I don't know the cost of, nor, to try and start a process that we haven't even discussed with the state. But I'll just leave it as it is and see where we land.
Councillor Toes, and then I'll come back to Councillor Hamill.
So first I just want to say thanks for changing the wording in 4, and that's much better wording. In my questions through you, Councillor Taylor, to Councillor Doran, could you explain 3 for me? The way I'm reading it, it appears to indicate that there'll be a north connection into Greenheart from Gilgai, a south connection from Stadium Drive, and then what you're nominally proposing in 3 is that there be east-west road connections permanently to the Robina Parkway to the east. Is that what you meant, or could you explain what you meant by that?
Yes, there's already in the master plan a Gilgai Road connection into Greenheart, and proposed in the master plan, which is online, as well as from Stadium Drive. What I'm suggesting is that the officers do not want to have to put a flood-immune road that goes across at the extreme cost, but they do have expressed the willingness to explore the ability for temporary on specific days valves to allow the traffic to flow to the north. So that's the line that says support flexible options for localised event day traffic management. And the other piece was to explore whether or not there is the merit to and it does say exploration of access roads, a merit to then having a road that connects out to Robina Parkway, internal, localised, not a transporter road. But again, that's part of the Greenheart master plan staging. And the reason being, you can still then, even though you're at maybe a 40-kilometre speed, you can exit the Robina area or exit the Greenheart out to the Parkway without having to then put pressure back into the Merrimack or localised Robina traffic area.
Right. So it is intended in that 3 for there to be vehicles on roads through Greenheart west to east or east to west. So you'll be able to. There's already car parks in the Greenheart master plan. There's already car parks on the Robina Parkway side. You're suggesting there should be an internal road. You've mentioned 40 kilometres an hour. Internal in the park. Is that kind of what you're getting at?
I'm suggesting that exploration be considered as part of stage 2 master plan, and it's not for me to decide. I have a personal view, but that's the recommendation change is to essentially allow for that exploration as part of the Greenheart stage 2 master plan.
Can I ask a question to Ross McCauley about that?
Yep.
So while Ross is coming in, my question is in the Greenheart master plan. I'm not familiar enough with it to recall whether there is expected to be vehicles on roads that would potentially enter at Gilgai and drive slowly to the Robina Parkway, or enter slowly at Stadium Drive and drive to Robina Parkway. Is that currently in the plan, or is it considered possible for that to even occur?
So through the chair, good question, councillor. So the first part of point 3, the road between Gilgai and Stadium Drive, is in the master plan. It was always determined to be a road that connects during event mode. So if you're coming from the north and you want to come to Greenhut, you would come down through come off Robina Parkway, or you'd come off Gilgai Road, and you would park and you would go to sport, recreate, do whatever you want, and you would leave that in that direction in normal mode. During an event, like a large festival or an event in the stadium, for example, that road would be open to effectively decant people in any which way possible, because at that point in time it's in event mode. It's meant to we want to get people off
Get
the
people
site.
out the quickest way we can.
The third dot point here is essentially proposing a east-west connection through the entire length of the park. That currently is not part of our planning for a commuter road. There is a sort of, in the master plan, that proposes a spine that sort of goes basically the entire length from east to west. That too could be looked at from an event perspective, whether we get buses or those types of movements at very specific times. But it was never proposed to be a commuter road.
So I'm thinking in my head of a road that's not dissimilar to the internal road at the Gold Coast Botanic Gardens. Is that conceivably deliverable inside Greenhut?
Through the chair, there is an internal loop road on the eastern edge, which is basically people come in off both Robina Parkway and Boowagon Road as a loop road to get access to some of the sporting facilities on the eastern side, and also some of the recreational facilities and environmental areas on the eastern side. But that distance between the east and the west is quite substantial, and it is all sensitive sort of wet plain and wetland area. So a connecting road we could certainly explore whether there's any benefit to that. Yes. But it would have to be substantial benefits, considering the likely cost to connect those two parts of the park together.
If I may, through the chair, like the stadium drive to Gilgai Road is non-controversial to us. That's the plan at the moment, where we're all good with that.
I still see that, yeah.
The only new part to this is the connection to Robina Parkway. What Councillor Doran, if I read it correctly, is asking for us is just to have a look at it. Yeah. We'll have a look and respond. What's the value for money proposition on?
But there's already a connection between Boowagon and Robina Parkway, like your Gold Coast Botanic Gardens type of internal road. But we haven't yet really thought about a parkway to Stadium Drive or a parkway to Gilgai connection at this stage. And that's the way you're interpreting it is that. And my part two of my question, which is probably through you to Michael, maybe. For this exploration to occur, there's obviously a transport team, and then there's Ross and his Greenhut team. Who would do this exploration, and how would we make that work? Would it form a separate incarnation of the Greenhut plan, or would this be part of the transport team? Nick is already...
It's just the one city. The two will work together. It's all structured GC. So.
Yeah, and through the chair, I've got no problem with exploring it. Yeah, I could go through the files, and I remember there were multiple iterations in the development of the master plan. There were certainly at the time there's sketches on there with a road going from east to west, and there was decisions made around the obvious transport benefits or otherwise as to whether that was worthwhile. The master plan didn't propose it, but it's certainly something we can explore and bring back the business case for it to be either in or out.
No, thanks. I'm going to go to Councillor Hamill, but we're just going to be mindful. I don't have a concern with the new 3, but the consideration of 26, 27. We made a deliberate discussion recently that we've got a gate funding program to ensure certain projects just don't land up in our budget that weren't considered properly. So I think we've just got to be very careful in relation to that funding for 26, 27. But Councillor Hamill.
Chair, so you've kind of taken where I was going with it. I have no problem with 3. There's no issue with exploring that in my eyes, but I'm not a big fan of adding things into the general mix for 26, 27 budget deliberations. Normal process would be there'd be a report come back to committee, so I wouldn't mind supporting something that puts a time frame when the report comes back so that it then rolls on from there. But I'm not a big fan of just adding stuff into the mix for budget out of nowhere. Like, we have no idea. I don't know if this is a 3-month piece of work or a 3-year piece of work to even get to that stage, and just to go jam that on, I don't support
So could I ask a question to Michael? What type of time frame is realistic to bring a report back?
Through the chair, I would think it would be towards the end of next calendar year. So if in terms of providing a Gate 2 report back to council as soon as that option study is complete next financial year, I think that would be the more
Chair,
appropriate.
I was going to propose either an amendment or a foreshadow to suggest that instead of the current red and 4, that it says that a report be presented back before September 2026, so that it at least locks in a time frame, giving it plenty of time to be in the mix for the 27-28 budget deliberations.
I'll come to Councillor Gates first, and then we can see whether they want to make a change.
I'll be deferring to Councillor Doran about what he'd like to do, but I wondered if there could be a further report about that new access and the costs around, the potential costs around the purchase of land, which I now understand is one block either side of the M1. Was it? Someone mentioned 2 blocks of land. You see, I know nothing about it. It's never been mentioned. It's come out of the blue today. So can we get some information on the land purchase and the costs?
My understanding that that's the intent of the report, to actually look deeper to find out what is actually entailed before we consider any budgetary. So I think what we've highlighted from this report is obviously the challenges we've got with state infrastructure that collaborates with our infrastructure. We've identified that there's a real need for Robina, and there's some real challenges in that region that need to be solved really sooner than later. And this has given us some guide to what are a couple of the opportunities that the city could consider with collaboration with state government. I think what we've highlighted so far in this recommendations is another option that should be considered, and I think it's important that all of those are considered and brought back to us to understand what we could consider in a future budget that could create local network improvements for Robina moving forward.
But is time of the essence if we're looking at a land purchase? Is it for sale, or are we just going to make an approach and buy it? What is the situation here?
Through the chair, until we have the outcome of the Gate 2, we don't know whether we've got a feasible project solution. So one would think that we'd need a reasonable business case to acquire land if that's required, and the Gate 2 assessment will come back looking at all of those options. It'll outline the proposed conceptual design. It'll outline any proposed land acquisition if required. It'll give estimates of cost, time, everything that you're asking for will
that
come
gives
out of
me
the
a greater
Gate
comfort.
2.
We're not going to go out and buy a block of land that we know.
Yeah, so Councillor Gates, this is where we're talking about, are we happy to make a change to the current, instead of taking with the funding consideration as part of the 26-27 budget, a change of report be presented, a future report be presented.
Do you want to say as part of a future,
or we do
as part of future budget deliberations? What do you want to say?
I'll take Councillor Hamill. I'm happy to.
So, as a committee member, I propose an amendment. And then I appreciate Councillor Gates' deferring Councillor Doran, but it's her motion. So I would propose an amendment that we adjust it to that a report be presented back to committee before September 2026. If that amendment isn't accepted, then I'll put a foreshadowed up.
Councillor Gates.
Well, I think that's September next year, and that's a whole 12 months. Is that?
So I think the options that we've got here is consider a funding amount into a budget that we don't know.
I understand, Councillor. I understand what the situation is. I equally understand what it's like having a community that sits in a traffic jam every day. So Coomera and Robina are the two areas of the city where this is happening. And I was really hopeful. I mean, I'm moving this really without a lot of knowledge, but I was really hopeful that there might be one measure that could be introduced which might help alleviate something for the Robina residents in a short time frame without waiting for another year for a report. So that's where I'm heading and hopeful.
Okay. So one of the options I just suggested is we could run a separate report that can come back earlier that consider some, what would be the word,
Through the chair, given Councillor Gates' points, what we could do is run an earlier report that would look at potential implications on acquisition early. Obviously, that would be without a final design element, so at least it would give visibility on potential impacts. And to your point, Councillor Gates, that early visibility, and we can provide some more detail around that. And then obviously the subsequent report on that preferred design solution would come later. So if that is a compromised position, we can certainly bring the potential acquisition report earlier, keep that momentum, and then the second report with the final solution.
But I think, Councillor Gates, weren't you asking, are there any other short-term solutions?
Is there
I think that
a small win that can be achieved before we wait until 12 months' time for another report? That's all I'm asking. There's not.
So I suppose it's for you. Are you happy with the change?
Well, yes.
I'm happy with the change?
Yes.
So can we...
And then we'll need another 8 that a separate report be provided detailing potential land acquisition.
Would that be tied up in that particular report?
No, we
or
want
you're
that
looking for
earlier.
it to bring it earlier?
Don't we want that earlier?
Sorry, through the chair, my understanding would be that the initial report would be outlining, I guess, the broad proposal and any implications on land acquisition, which we can do quickly. The second report, the Gate 2, we're saying we're effectively got a 12-month horizon before we completed that. So there's 2 separate reports. One would be around land take requirements, if any, and the second would be on the feasibility and the preferred solution.
So do you just want an 8 that seeks that a further report be provided to Council outlining potential land acquisitions to deliver the additional southern overpass? Okay,
I'm happy. Could we just add that? Can you just repeat that number 8 you want?
That a further report be brought to Council detailing not implications, detailing potential land acquisition to deliver the suggested additional M1 overpass south of whatever it was. Was it south of 82? South of exit 82.
82, yeah.
Excuse me, Chair. Isn't that part of the report that would be number 4? If we're looking at options in the report, and surely the report would tell us what the land costs would be.
I think what Councillor Gates is trying to bring a report forward earlier than the main report that will be delivered later next year. I think that's the intent that Councillor Gates is trying to achieve. Councillor Hamill, did you have a question?
Chair, I'm relying upon EGM and Nick and Mark saying they need 12 months, and I don't see much point in trying to shorten that up, because unless we're going to get it done in the next 12 weeks, it's not going to inform next year's budget.
Yep.
So just to put that out there, that I'm relying upon their advice. They need 12 months to do this properly. There's really not much point shortening up more than that, because it won't be ready to consider before next year's budget anyway. And I've got no problem with the additional one added on if there's a land acquisition suggestion, and that might be timely. Then an interim report that's specific to that we can support as well. And now with that, I'm happy to support this recommendation today.
Are you comfortable with that recommendation? Yeah, happy to second it, Councillor Hamill? Sure. Second it, Councillor Hamill. Would you like to... sorry, Councillor Marshall. Yep. Oh, are you happy with Councillor Marshall seconds? Councillor Marshall. Now, would you like to open?
Okay, well, I don't know that poor old Robina is going to be all that happy with the recommendation today. That despite the great work of the officers in in bringing this comprehensive report to us. There seems to be a problem in council delivering any valuable upgrades without the cooperation of the state government. I guess we can only hope that the new state government will agree, since they've taken our light rail away, and that will have a great impact on traffic, that they might agree to channel some of the funding towards Robina, which has long been highlighted as the only area other than Coomera in the city that has severe congestion. So there's obviously, from the report, a lot of work that needs to be done. I congratulate Councillor Doran as well for actually pressing. He's continued to press and drive us all a bit crazy with planning for Robina, but it has resulted in a comprehensive report. And I think the change to number 3 too is worth valuable consideration, especially given that it highlights it's for local event day traffic management. And we all know that that has been a problem in Robina as well, and this might go a long way to alleviating that. So all in all, happy to move this on behalf of Councillor Doran today.
Does anyone want to speak against the motion? Anyone else want to speak for the motion? So that again, I just want to, if I want to speak against, but I'm happy. Anyone want to speak for it?
I might do both, if that's okay. Can I speak
Councillor
against and for? So firstly, I've got some reservations about internal roads connecting the west to the east and the east to the west inside Greenheart. I think that the idea of having cars moving back and forth in there in a place that is so environmentally significant, but also such an important space for people to congregate and kids to play and stuff. I think that I have some reservations about that. But the idea that these, overall concepts are supported, I'm kind of nominally supportive of. I think what's missing in here is that we wrote last year, so 2023, I think it was, to the Labor state government in April 2024. They wrote back to us saying they didn't want to do it, and I get that. Maybe they didn't care that much because there wasn't a Labor member of Parliament in there. They didn't see it as an election priority. To me, there's a piece for us to kind of re-liven that conversation more formally with ministers at that level, and this resolution doesn't do that. I think under the new government there is a changing approach to transport solutions across the city, shall we say. I know that's pretty diplomatic because I have some strong views about certain transport projects that aren't in the plan. But it occurs to me that we have a unique opportunity to say, well, if you're not going to do X or Y, why don't you do A and B? And that this isn't that is not in the resolution, I think, is problematic. I think we have an opportunity to resolve something here, and we haven't done that, and we should. Finally, I'm just a bit concerned about the timeline. I think that there are projects that we can deliver in the next budget, the very next budget, the 2026-27 budget, that we should have regard to in this resolution, and that's not really captured. In fact, we've kind of suggested we're going to defer it for another 12 months, and I don't think, whilst I think those projects that we'll think about in 12 months are important, I don't think we should do that to the exclusion of delivering some relief now. And I say that in the context that every single person who lives in Mudgeeraba once, quite regularly, will drive through Robina in order to get to where they want to go. Like when Robina is at a standstill, Mudgeeraba has to wait, and that's problematic. And my voting against this motion isn't about not wanting to see an outcome for Robina. It's to say that I don't think we have been forthright enough in advocating for a better solution as a kind of a product of this report. And there are things that we could do that aren't in this resolution that we should do. And so, yeah, I think I won't. Well, I agree with the principle of us doing what we're trying to do. I just can't support this resolution in its current word, and I encouraged Councillor Doran to come up with some stronger words and more swift actions in order to take steps towards resolving some of that congestion I feel confident that he has planned to do that anyway. He cares deeply for this issue, and I know that when we get to full council next week, we'll have hopefully some new words that I can support. Thanks.
I'm going to speak for it. Look, it's important to understand that state government have major role to play in these infrastructures which connect our city. We can see our city is growing at a rapid rate, and state government have a role in our growth and our transport strategy moving forward. I really want to emphasise, and hopefully Seven does it, talk about advocating to state. But it's really important to understand that the current government has made some really big infrastructure changes overnight. We may be getting some briefs at TMR and our local officers level, but I think it's really important that the current representatives of the area really start yelling and screaming like Councillor Doran has. He's identified a real challenge in Robina, and I think we all understand that challenge. And if they're going to consider some major projects, which like Rainfall they have done, it's really important that some of that funding is directed to other infrastructure around the city. And this is an opportunity to say that this is an area that would help not just the state network, but our local networks that we all believe is being affected at the moment. It also makes sure that we do stick to our plan of a city that we're going to be having real projects that's been costed, put into budgets. I think that's one thing we identified previously, that we've had projects put into a budget that hadn't been fully considered. So if we're going to be consistent on previous council resolutions, it's important that we do follow those resolutions moving forward. So I think what this does is it actually identifies Robina as a challenging area at the moment with stadiums, schools, a growing area. It also considers a couple of different opportunities, whether through Greenheart that's there. I'm sure the considerations being discussed on the floor here will be considered whether it's appropriate or not to have some sort of transport corridor. And also make sure we follow our budget program accordingly. So from my perspective, I really strongly believe that Robina has got some major challenges. I think everyone in this room wants to see all of our city free and congestion-free and good public transport through our city. And this will really highlight Robina and connecting suburbs such as Councillor Tozer's that will be affected as well. So I hope we get a support for this resolution. Councillor Hamill, for or against?
For, if you're allowed, Chair. So, Chair, I just want to acknowledge I was a bit confused by Councillor Tozer's comments because I think we got a response from officers saying there were no very short-term projects that could be considered next year's budget, but I'm happy to be clarified on that after today's meeting if there is. I think it's important, like there's been a bit of this north versus south thing discussed today. Like it's got nothing to do with north versus south. These are whole of city projects with whole of city implications. Things have gone through different processes at different times, and it affects different parts of the city in different ways. Wherever there's a highway interchange and wherever there's local roads connecting to it, it's a problem everywhere. It's not just going to be in the M1, it's going to be in the Coomera connector as well. So this isn't going to be a problem that's gone away soon. In fact, there'll be more problems added to it as that connector goes through. It's experienced at Yatala, Ormo, Coomera, Robina, where the highway interchange is the bottleneck and all the local roads that connect into it. And the advice seems to be the same at all of them, is that there's really no point council doing projects independent of the state interchange, that it has to be delivered in a network approach. And that's why I kind of went back on that today, that's how we're approaching it at Coomera, that's how we're approaching it at Ormo, is to acknowledge that it has to be done in a partnership with DTMR, that there's no point us trying to jump ahead of it. And that I think in the long run, that's the only solution in Robina. While I would be hopeful that maybe if there was some state interest in expediting that maybe it could happen sooner. I can only work with what's presented in here today and what the change recommendation was today. So we'll just finish by saying I'd have no problem if there's some additional words or different words come to full council that might help with that. I could only work with what was put up today. The final part I wanted to say is I got no issue with looking at the number 3. It's just having a look at it. I think it's actually important because we've got such big aspirations for Greenheart of it doing a million things. I don't think what has ever been really run to ground properly is, can it actually handle a lot of that stuff? Is there things that, while it's great to say it's going to do this, has it actually ever got a road network or connections into it that can achieve that? I think that's the kind of work that will come out of that number 3. So happy to support this today, but also more than happy to look at some revised wording at the full council meeting that might help achieve that. And most importantly, would love to see the state MPs, not just for this area but around it, acknowledge that it's their failure to be coming out with announcements around 82 or securing funding for it, because the sooner that happens, the hell of a lot easier to make the council working behind it happen as well.
Councillor Doran, yep, happy to.
Thank you, Chair. So the intent behind wanting to get something into the budget was actually just to try to get some action on this, and I think that's the responsibility of me in my role. There was a transport strategy that was put in place, and it didn't have a lot of action in the short term, and we were constantly being told, I was constantly being told, that Robina was a priority. And then I think the other thing you look at is show me your budget and I'll show you your priorities. And what genuinely frustrates me is that there isn't $1 for a road upgrade in this financial year for Robina. So those two things are in significant contradiction to one another, and I think that it's very difficult to explain that to a community that is identified as one of the top priorities. I think the comments around the request to explore the access roads from Councillor Tozer, I can hear his concern, and I understand that. This is an ask to explore. And I note that we just endorsed, committee just endorsed, I'm not on this committee, a master plan for Firth Park that actually has a through road going through it. So, you know, it isn't entirely unprecedented. And I think that this change, we might have a look at it for full council, but I think this change is good. You know, it just means another year of the same situation getting worse. And the other point that I think is needing to be considered is, whilst these upgrades that are proposed, the intermediate upgrades, are just to deal with the current situation, we are looking at a new city plan that has to significantly address a lot of new houses in the city. We're also dealing with a potential dumping of 1,250 extra dwellings right next to one of these upgrades in Breakwater from the state government. So when Mr. Prasser talks about the state government playing their role, it's also not just a negative role. You've got to play a positive role in an area you're looking to impact. And, you know, I think that I welcome the discussions. I welcome any improvement, and I think that the people who use these roads will be frustrated by delay before a report, but that's how this works. And I think as long as we can show them a pathway to improving the situation that leads people to the highest NLA commercial space in the city, I think is really important.
So we're happy to take those as a close. I'll put the motion to you. All in favour? Against? Carry. Yeah, no problem. Does everyone want a 5-minute break? Take a 5-minute break. Back, come at 6.3 Central Gold Coast East West Public Transport Corridors. Gleb and Nick will do a presentation.
I think I'll start.
Yep.
Mr. Chair.
We're ready to go when you're ready.
Good afternoon, councillors. My name is Gleb. I'm a principal strategic planner working in Nick's team.
Oh, sorry. So we're not going into close. We've spoken to the team, and at this stage, the team's comfortable that there's nothing in there at this stage that can't be have the presentation in open. If there's anything that is raised during the presentation or questions, we'll go into close at that point. So at this stage, we're comfortable to stay in open.
Thank you. I'm going to talk about the Central Gold Coast East-West public transport corridors today. And this presentation is on the back of TIC 855, where we were asked to prepare a report that would include a summary of the East-West corridors and highlight the benefits and anticipated potential impacts on the existing networks. A quick outline for today. I'll do an introduction about the studies that looked at the Central Gold Coast East-West connections. I'll talk about the community benefits and potential impacts on the road network. I'll highlight some of the steps that we propose going forward, and I'll close with the recommendations. Just for some context, we know that Gold Coast is the fastest growing city. With that comes rise in congestion, and we know that public transport participation, particularly in the Central Gold Coast area, is quite low, 2.3%. Big issue is that the buses currently travel in what we call mixed traffic, which means they're subjected to traffic delays, particularly around peak times, and there is a heavy reliance on cars for travel. The three studies in the table looked at the high-frequency public transport in the Central Gold Coast area. The first study is the Central Gold Coast East-West Passenger Transport Study that was led by TMR, completed in 2023. And this study was made as an umbrella study, where the number 2 and 3 studies have then progressed after that study was finished. So Robina to Miami planning investigation was completed by the City of Gold Coast, completed in 2024, and currently Nerang to Broadbeach preliminary evaluation is ongoing, led by TMR. I'm now going to talk about the Central Gold Coast East-West Passenger Transport Study. In its purpose, it had a long-term vision. It was designed to identify east-west corridors connecting heavy rail and light rail. In that, it was set out to create fast and reliable connections for public transport. Its vision was to create connected, reliable and city-shaping corridors to maximize connectivity and support planned growth in the area of Central Gold Coast. With that, it also aimed to reduce car dependence. The study area is on the screen. It's bounded to the north by Nerang River, to the east, the coastline, Talabajara Creek to the south, and M1 to the west. Some of the key challenges that were highlighted as part of the study were that the short trips were more attractive to be made by car, so public transport couldn't compete with these. And this is probably due to the area having many attractors within that area, and majority of the routes not being direct enough, and public transport required, if you were to take public transport, you were required to change seats quite often. So whether it's between the two buses, for example, or light rail to bus or heavy rail to bus. M1 still remains as a barrier for the area. The study identified primary, secondary and tertiary trip generators and suggested some of the movement corridors for these generators. For example, Robina, Broadbeach, Nerang, Burleigh heads were identified as primary trip generators, and they would warrant direct and fast links between them. The secondary trip generator areas were identified as Miami, Merrimack Station, Varsity Lakes, and local connections to major centres would be the most suitable type of movement corridor. And then there were tertiary locations identified, about 15 smaller nodes. Basic coverage for public transport was deemed appropriate for these. Further in the study, there were 3 priority precincts identified. They were Nerang, Broadbeach and Robina. As a result, priority routes were also identified: Nerang to Broadbeach, Robina to Miami, and Robina to Broadbeach. The first 2 routes, Nerang to Broadbeach and Robina to Miami, were then selected for further investigation. I'm going to talk about Nerang to Broadbeach route preliminary evaluation, which is currently being undertaken by TMR. Because the project is currently underway, it remains quite sensitive. So until it's finished, we can't disclose the exact details of the project. So we estimate that TMR will finish this project at the end of the year. We understand that the business case will follow that project as well. But the study so far identified Nerang to Broadbeach route. Along that route, as you know, there are quite a number of attractors. For example, there is a Nerang train station. There is a Gold Coast Carrara Sports Precinct, Carrara Markets, the Lanes Development, Pacific Fair Shopping Centre, Convention Exhibition Centre, interchange at the Broadbeach South and the beach. Robina to Miami high frequency bus route assessment. This piece of work was done by the City Council, and this was on advice from the previous umbrella study that I talked about. This study looked at linking Robina to Miami, specifically the heavy rail station and GCLR3 Miami North light rail station. Key locations were identified along the route: Robina Town Centre, Varsity CBD and the surrounding commercial areas, Bond University and PZ Park. We wanted the study to look at 3 options. Option 1 was to propose upgrades to bus stop infrastructure only. Option 2 was probably the most ambitious option that we looked at, and that envisaged upgrade to stops and road infrastructure to prioritize buses along the route. Option 3 was a hybrid option where balanced and targeted improvements would be made along the route, but not along the whole route. I should point out that we looked at bus rapid transit type of connection for that route, and I'll talk a little bit about that. In this diagram, I'm showing what the bus rapid transit system or BRT type system, what components it has. For example, there are larger buses that are capable of carrying more people. The buses are prioritized. There is a particular style of branding of buses and the bus station or stop infrastructure. And these are the sort of modern systems that we wanted to test for this route. Obviously, it creates, if the buses are traveling in the priority lanes, it creates time savings for travel. We would also recommend that something like this could have a turn up and go service where you don't need a timetable. And these type of systems could be delivered in stages. Some other examples of what was envisaged as part of this: BRT, so type of vehicles at the top, where you can see it's quite similar in look and feel to the light rail. And at the bottom, these are some of the examples of the upgrades that we, again, envisaged as part of this project, or investigation, I should say. Premium bus stop on the left and more of a station on the right.
Could I just ask a question on the way? This particular photo here, obviously we've got 2 examples, top and bottom. One is a dedicated rapid bus system, and the one below doesn't seem to have a dedicated bus lane. Is that what we're looking at here?
So Thank you for your question. This specific example at the top is, yes, bus priority, although it's probably unclear whether the bus priority is along the whole route of it, but it really is about the vehicle and the look and feel of what it could look like together with the bus station or stop infrastructure. Just for context, at the bottom is, on the left, is a bus stop which could serve as an intermediate stop where potentially this would be serving, for example, Robina and Miami, but intermediately you would create a stop, and this is sort of an example on the left. On the right is more of a proper station. So again, this is just for an example of what the public transport infrastructure servicing this would look like, specifically the bus stop and station. Some of the challenges that were highlighted as part of the study, it was very apparent from the start that we had limited space to work with at the terminals at Robina Station and Miami GCLR3 Station at Sendercock Park. With that also, we looked at the corridors and there were some constraints identified specifically around Robina Town Centre, Lava Drive, Varsity Parade and Oceanic Drive. Why these constraints were identified is because of the type of vehicles we were looking at. As I mentioned before, the vehicles are larger, they're actually longer. So for these vehicles to navigate the space safely, we would look at some upgrades along the way, just so they can fit safely within the road space. Some of the upgrades that we looked at were quite costly, and that's in regards to new stations as well as the intersection works. And obviously there would be traffic impacts in the reallocation of road space to accommodate bus priority. So at the top there is a diagrammatic view of what Robina Town Centre could look like. I think you may have seen this previously, but essentially it shows bus priority and again bus station infrastructure. At the bottom there is a cross-section of what potentially Varsity Parade could look like, again accommodating bus priority. As part of the study, we also looked at order of magnitude strategic cost estimates for all options. Option 1 came at $75 million, and not surprising, it's the lowest option in cost because the only upgrades proposed were to the bus stop infrastructure or bus station for that matter. Option 2 was the highest, and again, this included full bus priority along the way at $750 million, and option 3, the balanced or hybrid option, yielded $475 million estimate. Now, I stress that these estimates are order of magnitude. They were done in 2023, and they were done for planning and comparison purposes only. I also wanted to note that the 100-day review undertaken by the state had some recommendations, specifically recommendation number 50 that mentioned that the upgrades to Gold Coast public transport by delivering infrastructure and or operational improvements should be made, specifically in Nerang to Broadbeach and Robina to Miami areas. And it also mentioned Gold Coast high-frequency bus network. Some of the benefits to the community were identified as part of our study, or in fact other studies as well. Reduced reliance on private vehicles, improved access to jobs, education, and events. And traditionally we see positive changes when high-frequency public transport network is introduced. We see changes in land use uplift, specifically including employment, and that is around transit-oriented developments or hubs. Property values also uplift in those, and increase in walkability of surrounding areas around the transport nodes. Because as we know, no public transport trip is made without walking or cycling first, getting to that node. Some of the impacts on the road network. Obviously, as I mentioned before, reallocation of road space will be required to accommodate many of these. Intersection and road upgrades and widening, that would create potential traffic impacts. Some of the property will be impacted as well, depending on the options, and that would cause reprioritization of traffic management for the city in this area. We then looked at, out of all the studies, what could be some of the actions that we would highlight in the short, medium, and longer terms. So some of the quick wins we thought could be delivering low-cost improvements to improve frequency and hours of operation of the existing services. We would continue to advocate for business cases for Nerang to Broadbeach and Robina to Miami corridors. And we would then look at undertaking detailed corridor planning and business case development in the medium term, with the view to advocating and securing funding commitments with the state and federal agencies. And in the longer term, of course, we would like this delivered. This is the end of my presentation. So these are some of the recommendations. I think recommendation number 1 is no longer applicable. This has been changed.
Do we want to go to the other? Yep.
But otherwise, we recommend that Council notes the contents of the Central Gold Coast East-West Public Transport Corridors report. We also recommend that Council continues to advocate for improved East-West public transport, including short-term and longer-term investment into Nerang and Broadbeach and Robina to Miami corridors, and that the Council collaborates with the Queensland Government to ensure these priority projects are embedded in their transport strategy for our region.
Question, Councillor Marshall?
Thank you, Chair, and through you. Just in terms of the Miami or Robina to Miami corridor, is that the corridor that we are fixed on? If we do a business case, it's going to be what we presented here? Is that?
Through the Chair, thank you for your question. This corridor, Robina to Miami corridor, was identified as part of the umbrella study that I talked about. Look, there's quite a bit of movement that we've had since that study was completed, and even since we completed the Robina to Miami study in terms of LGMS development and the recent announcements by the state. So we're not fixed on that particular route, but it does make sense linking Robina with other parts along the route and then linking it to the light rail. But happy to look at the alternatives as well.
Just through the Chair to add to what Gleb was saying there, the reason it has been chosen is because of all of the attractors that it can collect along the way. If there are items that you think we've missed or should be adding, then I'm happy to talk about it. But that was the primary reason that we thought going through Pizzy and Bond and Varsity, all of those along the way made a lot of sense.
Yeah, and just to follow, and I appreciate that, and thank you, I would agree. I think that's the route that goes past the most amount of schools, playgrounds, pool, that sort of stuff. I guess speaking for Councillor Martin and I, there's recently been a road map overlay on Christine Avenue east of Bermuda Street, and it's created a fair amount of stress that people potentially might lose their property on that road. And it's been explained to them that's because that's an east-west public transport corridor, and so they'll necessarily see this now and say, well, it's not. Is the overlay still in place?
Yeah, through the Chair. So I think you're referring to the city plan road widening overlay.
Yeah.
So the reason why we need to widen through there is for multimodal corridor, not specifically for bus rapid transit. It could be for bus rapid transit, could just be for normal buses. But when I say multimodal means cars, freight, active transport, walking, cycling. So the reason why we need to widen that bit of Christine Avenue, the balance of Christine Avenue is 30 metres wide. That section through there is 20 metres. So it's very difficult to get 4 lanes, plus really good verges for active transport in a 20-metre corridor. So that's the reason why we need to widen the road through that eastern end of Christine Avenue.
Councillor Young?
It seems that we're dealing with 2 quite distinct projects in respect of the Nerang Broadbeach project that's under the control of DTMR, and we're waiting for them to come out with their findings in October. But at a more refined level, there's the work being undertaken by council officers on the Robina link. And that's reflected in the fact that I wasn't consulted about this, whereas the other councillors are recognised as stakeholders. So I'm just wondering if we're going to continue to keep these as two separate projects, or ideally try to merge them. Maybe the EGM's got some comment.
In my view, they're two separate projects.
Separate projects. Mm. So would there be a report that provides that level of detail to us as a committee in the future for the Nerang Broadbeach? Because at this point we've just got a very high level diagram of the study area, whereas for the Miami one, it's detail. We've got bus stops and things like that identified. Thank you.
Yep, through the chair, Councillor Young. So that Nerang to Broadbeach is being done by Department of Transport and Main Roads.
Yes.
They're leading it. They're funding it. We are a key stakeholder, but it's their prerogative about the outcomes when that's happened.
Do you have insight to that?
We do. Yeah, we're a key stakeholder, but it's being led by them. The Robina to Miami corridor, we've done this little bit of work, but it's far from, again, it needs a lot more work. Absolutely. What we're suggesting is we advocate to the state to get them to also do a preliminary evaluation and a business case for Robina to Miami. They need to lead it. They're responsible for public transport, not the city. We are key stakeholders. We advocate. We may even, help look at funding, but the state, need to lead the business case for Robina to Miami.
Well, I won't get into debate, but I will comment that we have provided quite a significant amount of ratepayer money for public transport in Coomera and places like that, and that's been of advantage to the public, and we've initiated those good outcomes, and I think that we have a role here. But just sticking with questions then, once DTMR have finished their study and made that available to you, are you likely to provide us a report, please?
Through the chair, very difficult question to answer because it's a study that's led by the state. So really, it's a matter for the state to report the outcomes of that study.
If I can add to that through the chair, I think the answer to that would be we could, but after it's become made public by the state, is their project to announce and to lead. Once it's out there, we can come brief you, and probably with the TMR guys around what the actual project looks like.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Chair.
So could I just ask a question? And I'm looking at the Rapid Trust bus system and understanding our east-west connectability. And obviously we've got the light rail at the moment, and everyone's clear on what's happening at stage 4 at the moment. But I just want to make sure the community is really clear in relation to a rapid bus system that's got dedicated corridors. So I'm picturing, we've talked about the Broadbeach, and then we're talking about the Miami east-west, and then we're talking about the extension of light rail. In here it does 5.7 talks about impacts. When we're talking a dedicated bus service or a rapid bus system, we still need to have, similar to light rail, the same corridor for a rapid bus as we would do light rail. Was it very similar? How does it compare between the two?
Through the chair, I guess in terms of comparing a bus rapid transit solution for the Southern Gold Coast public transport corridor, so as an alternative to light rail. If that's the question, yes, the corridor widths would be similar. So the level of impact, the corridor width, in terms of acquisition, alignment, corridor are very similar, and in fact they were evaluated in the PE evaluation for light rail 4. So yeah, the dedication of the lane widths drives the corridor width.
And is that why 5.6 does talk about an east-west connectability? There will be the similar challenges in relation to impacts of physical size in each of those projects.
Through the chair, yes, there will be. To have a right of way, there will be impacts, as we highlighted in the report, traffic impacts and property impacts.
Councillor Hamill.
Chair, I had a first question off because this is a bit unique. We've got one corridor that's state-led and the other corridor that we've done the first lot of work on, and I was interested in officers' opinion if that current model of us doing some of the pre-work and then being passed on to DTMR to do the rest of it, is that a model that works? Is it a model that we might repeat in the future, or have we learned from this one that it's not effective and it's maybe not the way we do it in the future?
Through the chair, my view is that we talked earlier around the opportunity that was made public with the cancellation of Light Rail 4 to undertake, I guess, a joint integrated planning or multimodal transport study for the city. I think that is the opportunity. There definitely needs to be collaboration through all the papers we've had today. We can see the one network impacts really of the state network and the city network are integrated. I think there's some work for the city and DTMR to do around who is accountable for planning, what level of investment and resources we provide and support. I think at the moment it's been a little ad hoc. We see some instances where in essence we're probably doing very early planning study for state infrastructure. So I think the opportunity in the new discussions around this, more collaborative approach would be to put, framework or some type of MOU around how those relationships should work going forward. That would be my objective and what I'll advocate for at officer level.
Chair, so my next question was around corridor identification and protection. It's as we've seen just with the Little Christine Avenue section, like it is quite a confronting thing for residents when they get letters about losing whole or part, or sometimes only a matter of inches of their property. And all of these corridors, no matter where they are going to have those kind of impacts, which the sooner those impacts are identified and the corridor is identified and protected, the easier it is for people to make decisions about what they do long term. So how do we see getting to a point sooner of getting corridors not just identified but then protected so that things can be mapped in all the appropriate places and that people can make informed decisions before we start seeing redevelopment occur along these areas and us hitting issues of where buildings create choke points?
Through the chair. Years.
Yeah, thanks.
To have a quick solution to this, again, it requires resourcing, it requires collaboration with TMR, and to be able to protect those corridors through our planning scheme, to make an amendment to the planning scheme is a 18-month to 2-year process. So there's a lot of work that needs to be involved to do the detailed corridor planning to work out what is the corridor footprint you require, and then to put that to protect the corridor, and then the state have their own corridor protection process, Category C planning, they gazette it. So there is a whole process involved for each one of those. But we've got a series of these corridors as part of the development of the new planning scheme, LGMS. There's a whole series of these corridors that will be identified for east-west, and detailed corridor planning has to be done for each one of those. So it's a multi-year process.
Chair, my next question was around, so we were given some very high level, and I make very high level costs with one of the corridors that gave 3 different options. I was a bit interested, since we know the percentage of people that we need to see a behaviour change from, so the city doesn't come to an absolute grinding halt in the future, why a low or hybrid approach is even suggested when, as far as I could see, the only option that's going to help us get anywhere near the percentage of PT trips we need would have to be to go for the ultimate option. So why does it present options, or is it an actual thing that we look at a hybrid when it's probably not going to achieve the behaviour change we need from it?
So yes, it's all about options assessment. If we didn't look at it, someone would ask us why we didn't look at it. So we looked at it. It was probably more about, is there something that we can stage? Can we go in there and do something quickly now? Is there something we can progressively upgrade intersections and working towards a right-of-way solution? That's why we looked at it.
I'd just add, any of these PT solution outcomes need to be future-proofed. So one of the key things you've touched on is corridor protection. Any of these solutions, if we go from standardised bus services and escalate up to a bus rapid transit, and that might be done over a period of time, I guess the initial planning and corridor protection is done with a view of a 20-year, 30-year horizon. And that's one of the challenges as a city for our own network, and obviously working with the state, is to get that level of certainty, protect the corridors, particularly where we're looking at, increased urban densities and, economic development along some of those corridors. So the yin and the yang are very important, but to me it's really about that long-term view. Even if it's a staged solution, we're effectively planning for an ultimate solution very early.
Chair, I had a question about the Nerang to Broadbeach corridor. Is it Nerang Station to Broadbeach? Is it Heavy Rail Station Broadbeach, or is it Nerang proper to Broadbeach?
I can help with that.
Through the chair. This is an ongoing study by TMR. The details that the council is asking about are probably a bit too detailed to discuss in the open forum. I'm happy to provide that separately.
It's okay. I'll put a change recommendation in that helps with it. That's okay, if you can't answer it directly today.
Okay.
Yep. You've probably said enough by not being able to answer it.
The previous decision of council was for it to go into the CBD of Nerang, so west of the motorway. But I don't know if that's been respected by TTMR.
So, Chair, I wouldn't mind if there was a willingness of committee to explore changing the recommendation to reinforce that position Councillor Young just raised, that it still remains the city's preferred position that the Nerang to Broadbeach corridor includes the corridor going under the M1 and into Nerang proper, just to make sure that our position is still 100% on that. Chair, the last question I had for the EGM, and he's kind of touched on this a little bit, but if he wanted to maybe talk to it a bit more, so this current approach between councils and state governments of approaching ultimate public transport networks for cities is, in my opinion, pretty hopeless. You've kind of outlined a bit of a thought on how it could be better, but is there a better option than even that, again, of how between state and councils we can get to much better planning and much longer thinking in this space instead of this current ridiculous approach to it?
Through the chair, I guess my view is one of many. What I will say on a positive note, that our level of engagement with the regional director and the DTMR Gold Coast region, Southern region is excellent. So their level of collaboration at officer level is very strong. We did have the Minister for Transport in visiting the Mayor earlier this week, and one of the topics discussed was enhanced collaboration and how we might collaborate together more effectively for public transport strategy for whole of city. But there are those tensions and different drivers. Investment priority on the state network, obviously different to that when we look at our own city network. But to me, it's really about developing some kind of framework or MAU that we've got repeatability and clarity, particularly when we're doing early planning, pre-fees type studies where it's really a bit of a chicken and egg on who moves. So I'm hopeful that through that engagement and undertaking for the Minister to collaborate effectively with us, that we might be able to draft up a little bit more of a guideline, shall we say, to improve on what the current performance has been.
Chair, I thank the EGM for that response, and when you're ready, I'll do that change recommendation to add in the Nerang part.
Councillor Martin, do you have a question?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I realise this is fluid and in light of recent decisions, but I guess what I'm keen to ask is about, in terms of a corridor, is that Burleigh to Varsity Lakes, and I think it's gotten even more potentially critical in that, there's a lot of, if you bring up the map that you had, there's just a lot of circles there, end of the line of heavy rail, end of the line of light rail, and a lot of networks in between, a lot of feeders in between. So just wondering, obviously we've got a recommendation here that talks about the Nerang corridor and the Robina corridor, but just seeking an update as to why we wouldn't have that Burleigh to Varsity corridor in this outcome.
Through the chair, yes, that would be another corridor. There's a whole suite of corridors. Ashmore Road would be another one. Marala Drive, Brisbane Road through Bigger Waters. For the city of 1 million people, we need a whole network of mass transit. So that would be one. And I think the opportunity now that the Department of Transport Main Roads have been given a mandate to prepare this multimodal study/strategy, we don't know what the terms of reference of it is yet, we'll be able to help identify and leverage some of those opportunities for mass rapid transit corridors moving forward.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the being in open and for the report. I just have two quick questions. On page 204, it talks about the Central Gold Coast East-West Passenger Transport Study, and it says completed in 2023. The study examined how to improve East-West public transport connections across the city. I just had a look before this meeting, and I can't see any report that's been released. Has that report been released that says it's been completed? Can we get access to review that?
Through the chair. Yes, so the study was completed in May 2023. We were keen to brief elected officials, but it was a Department of Transport Main Roads led study, and they requested us to wait until it had been formally endorsed by the Minister. But given the passage of time now, hence this report. But
okay. So the contents of that study is contained within this report?
So the outcomes of the study are pretty much reported here. It's the outcomes of the study were two preferred corridors, which were Nerang to Broadbeach, Robina to Miami.
Right.
So that's pretty much what the outcome of the study was.
Is there any reason why it hasn't been released?
That's a question for Team R.
Oh, right, okay.
It's not ours to release.
No, it's not you guys.
But it's the look, and I think to echo what Nick is saying, that the major content of the report is now public by both.
Okay, thank you. And the last question I have is, so as part of the recent announcement regarding Gold Coast Light Rail Stage 4, and the Executive General Manager may have had a similar question from Councillor Hamill, but just to clear it up, they talked about moving forward about the announcement around a multimodal Gold Coast transport study. How does this fit within your understanding of their intentions around that study?
Both these corridors would be incorporated in that study. As I mentioned earlier, the scope of that study and any details, other than a broad conversation, haven't been progressed yet. But certainly these two corridors would feature in that study.
Thank you. And just one last question, Chair. It was announced or discussed a few moments ago that the outcomes from the 100-day review outlined 3 items, and I'm going to forget them, but they don't appear to align with where the state's at from the East-West study outcomes, in that from 2020 when that started to now doesn't seem to align. Do you expect that they can deliver on those outcomes based on your engagements with TMR? Because it feels like they're at a pretty very early days in the concept.
Through the chair, I think the answer to that is depending on what the ambition is. So to have a enhanced bus service with maybe some queue jumps at stations, some priority things like that, it could be done. Right. To have a fully blown dedicated corridor for a BRT system is highly unlikely from where we are today.
Thank you. And sorry, I did just come up with one last question. The modelling to support the future city plan and the need to accommodate 1 million people and another 180,000 homes, has the transport modelling modelled their work with an east-west version of a rapid transit, or is that not part of your modelling that's going into assessing the transport solutions for the next city plan?
Through the chair, you might cast your mind back to 14th of July, where we had a workshop with all the councillors to talk about our transport strategy.
Yep.
And you would have seen that map there with the number of lanes we require. That's spitting out of our model.
Yes.
If we've got a pure car-centric network,
yes,
we need a significant amount of lanes on our road network. So we do know that if we put these mass transit systems into our model, so our model is multimodal, it has a big impact on the future need for additional traffic lanes on our network. We will still need additional lanes, no doubt about that, but it has a significant impact in reducing the need. So it's important that we do look at mass transit.
Through the chair, I'll just add that we know that the attractiveness and the uplift in passenger numbers on conventional buses is very low, and if we're aspiring to achieve 15 to 21% PT mix, we know that we need to have a really attractive public transport solution. We know light rail is attractive. Well, light rail is gone for stage 4. We know that the Brisbane Metro has high passenger numbers and is in essence has some similar elements to a light rail service. But if we continue to look at conventional bus services, we will in no way come close to the PT uplift we need across our total transport mix. So that's something in the back of our mind, and certainly the conversations we're having with DTMR.
I'm not on the committee, but I just wanted to say that I appreciated the effort and the briefing that I did get from the officers on this. It was a GBI I did with Councillor Marshall, and Councillor Hamill will have a change, but I think that what I'm assuming it will be, continued engagement with the state on their whatever transport strategy they're going to come up with would be really.
Thank you. Councillor Hamill, change recommendation?
So, Chair, I was just wondering, would the EGM prefer to write to the regional director, or do you want the mayor to write to the minister? What's your preference?
I'd suggest if you're proposing a committee recommendation, be the mayor to the minister, and right. I'll do that as a matter of course with the district director.
So I would add the 4 in that the mayor write to the minister for transport and main roads. Reconfirming the city's position that the Nerang Broadbeach public transport corridor connect into the Nerang CBD. I just want to check, Chair, because this is Councillor Young's area. Are you happy with that, Councillor Young? Is that enough?
Happy to second it.
Yeah. Are you right with that first, the whole lot?
First sentence.
You first with that first sentence in there, or do you want that out? Yeah. Comfortable with that, Councillor Hamill?
So, Chair, maybe just off Councillor Doran's comment that maybe we could say that the mayor write to the Minister for Transport and Main Roads reconfirming the city's position that the ultimate Nerang Broadbeach public transport corridor connect into the Nerang CBD, which just allows that if it happens to be delivered in stages, it just confirms that we see it in the Nerang CBD at some stage, or must end in the Nerang CBD.
You're comfortable with the wording?
I'm happy with that.
Councillor Young, happy to second it?
Yes, thanks, Chair. Thanks.
Okay. Would you like to open on that, Councillor?
Please, Mr. Chair. So, this is an absolutely underwhelming statement, but public transport to our city's growth and city's livability is critical. It's beyond critical. It is going to be a multi-billion-dollar commitment from all levels of government over the next 20, 30, 40 years. And anyone who thinks it's not going to cost that kind of money to achieve the ultimate public transport network for this entire city is kidding themselves. That is going to be the ask and going to be the need. It is important to note we are talking about an ultimate public transport city network for the entire city. So much focus recently has been on one section of one project in the south that we've removed a lot of time, a lot of effort and a lot of energy away from talking about the ultimate public transport network to serve from the very north to the very south and east and west, and then indeed how the rest of the SCQ region connects into this city, because that is what is needed. The million people before 2046 is just a point in time. And then the next day occurs and that growth continues on. So the longer that we cannot get this ultimate public transport network agreed to by all levels of government and lock in a plan of how to deliver it, the more and more the negative impacts in the future will be felt by this city. And those impacts are already being felt now in some areas, but that's nothing compared to what it looks like with more coming into the city in the future. Council is already a significant funder of public transport. Our commitment into light rail and into bus improvements is in the hundreds of millions. So we are in this space, and I have yet to meet a ratepayer who has a concern with their rates going towards public transport. In fact, quite the opposite. Every single budget survey we have done continues to demonstrate a heightened increase from residents wanting to see more of their money spent in that space, because they don't care if it's ratepayer funds or taxpayer funds. It's the impacts they're all feeling. They're the ones stuck in traffic. They're the ones without genuine options of public transport to not have to get in a car to drop the kids at school or to get to the shops or to get to sport. They are looking for genuine options, and they are sick of the arguing between levels of government over where it is and what it is and how much it's going to cost. Chair, we spoke on this a little bit through a couple of questions today, and the EGM gave some initial response, but I want to reinforce we need a better approach than this. This is hopelessly slow towards delivering the ultimate public transport of the city. I can have very clear memory. It was in the first couple of meetings of being elected in 2020 when this piece of work was commenced, and quite frankly, we haven't got very far in 5 years. And at the current speed, it'll be 50 bloody years before we get to it. So there has to be a different approach. The EGM has spoken to better connection and better advocacy and discussion between DTMR and council at the moment. While that's brilliant, I really need to be hearing more than that, because this is just too important to the city. So some other options have been explored of how that current engagement can be taken to the next level, of how it can look at committing through MOUs to funding from both levels of government to make sure that we get an ultimate public transport network locked in, that we can get on with that corridor protection, which is critical. If we want to mitigate risk to residents and business owners in the future, that corridor protection is critical. And finally with that might be an opportunity that if this piece of work is about the ultimate network and it's done by council and state in genuine partnership, then maybe there could be legislation to lock that network in to ensure that public transport is not something held to ransom at election times and cannot be changed at the whim of governments, and that we can lock in a funding arrangement that is over many decades to actually get that network delivered. For this particular piece of work for these two corridors, it is too slow. I hope the new state government's talk on the back of their Light Rail 4 announcement that they're genuine about getting into this space is there, but I will wait to see for that those words to turn into actual action.
Anyone want to speak against the motion for Councillor Young?
I don't want to speak against, but I'll correct Councillor Hamill. I thank him for his strong advocacy there. But I believe that we began this project about 2016, and it is very disappointing that we're at this point in time and the DTMR still got its plans in secret and aren't sharing them with the public or us. Haven't had conversations with us about what that might be. We don't know what's happening, and I think, as Mr. Prasser said, Council's really leading the way here, and that's not our role. I think we're great partners and participants, but it's up to the state to be delivering these outcomes. And I was a little bit concerned about the terms collaborate and advocate, which we've been doing for years, and hopefully the government will pursue this with a stronger interest, and as Councillor Hamill said, with reference to Light Rail Stage 4 and all of the big statements made about not progressing that and putting money into other forms of public transport. Well, this one's knocking at the door, Minister, and we need some action, because these east-west links are really critical. Thanks, Chairman.
Councillor Gates, are you speaking for the motion?
Yes, I am. And I totally agree that a great network is critical. The only part I don't agree with is that we should be heading down the path of funding to any large extent. We've taken on over the years so many funding opportunities, if you'd like to call them that are actually the responsibility of the state. And it's our ratepayers. We've only got a finite amount of dollars to spend every year. We can't even get our road upgrades happening to the extent that we would like, as we've heard earlier today. So we don't need our ratepayers to take on a shared cost of all public transport at this point in time. And I would hate for the state to think that we're opening our arms and welcoming their ask for more funding when our resources are so limited and we have so many wonderful capital projects that are on our books that we're still whittling away at and having to prioritise because we don't have the dollars. And this is, as Councillor Hamill has said, billions of dollars to get a really effective and efficient public transport system working citywide, and it is definitely the responsibility of the state government. So I thoroughly endorse our continued advocacy and collaboration. I just don't support our paying for it.
And I like to speak for it and talk about public transport and infrastructure from state government and how far apart we are. Government set target levels for ourselves in our city plan as a growing city. We've already heard today that we've got local traffic network challenges because of large infrastructure projects that should be delivered to help us grow as a city. We're also talking about public transport that's important for our not just our current residents, but future generations moving forward that need to be delivered by state government. It's really important we collaborate really closely in this space because it's not our residents today that's going to be impacted. It's going to be our kids and their kids moving forward. And I always say light rail stage 4 is my way of saying to Coomera or the second M1 that we've had conversations for 10, 15 years. It was a political and financial decision that was made a long time ago that public transport, traffic or some infrastructure should have been delivered, that it took the gridlock of the M1 for action to happen. And if we don't get more collaborative and more forward thinking in relation to these major projects, we're going to have not ourselves dealing with traffic transport congestion, which we are now. We've seen a report already in one area of the city. We're going to have it throughout the city, and it's going to be a lot more challenging getting around our city moving forward. So public transport, state government, we need to collaborate more broadly. As Councillor Hamill mentioned before, this is east-west. These are two. I'm sure there's other corridors that need to be teased out a lot more moving forward to what it's going to look like in 20, 30 years' time. But it's important that we as a city keep highlighting to state government what our public transport looks like, because we're the ones that deal every day with our constituents, our residents, our visitors. They're coming to our city, and it's important that we do lead the way. Yes, we shouldn't be paying for it. It should be state government. But if we haven't or don't actually advocate strongly and in some cases contribute to kicking state government in the backside to get them on the way, I don't think we'd have a public transport that we've got today without council's involvement. So it's important that we continue pushing for better public transport. This is just two of the current east-west connectability of public transport that we're talking about, and I'm sure there's many more that we need to consider moving forward. So I now put the motion to the floor. Councillor Hamill, sorry, close. Yep, my apologies.
Mr. Chair, I respect Councillor Gates' contribution. I think we've already let this one go since we're the best part of $1 billion in the light rail so far. Like, we let that go a long time ago that this city isn't going to be involved in public transport, and we just are. So we're past that, in my opinion, already. This recommendation today doesn't do anything to funding, but just to make that point, I have a very strong difference of opinion to Councillor Gates there. We are already well committed to ratepayer funds, and I personally don't have a problem with the idea of exploring more of that in the future, and that is on the back of city budget survey responses. That is ratepayers saying we are okay with our ratepayer funds being invested in their space. I say that not just about light rail, but I can definitely say it on behalf of my ratepayers who have benefited hugely from an $8 million commitment from the city towards a public transport uplift for buses in the north of the city. Mr. Chair. Yeah, had an upgrade. I'll just make it again. That addition to number 4 is really important and I think Councillor Young is right, this piece of work is before us and was back in 2016 it started, and the whole way through it has always been about Nerang CBD connecting to Broadbeach, that it is really important that M1 doesn't become another block, as it does in so many other areas, to active transport and to just getting east to west, and we need public transport to connect underneath and open up opportunities in Nerang CBD. So just to call that out as being really important, and to note, I think Councillor Young has been advocating for that strongly the entire time. And Chair, to finish, again, words are cheap from the new state government and from state MPs. Yep, you've cancelled one public transport project. We look forward to your announcements and commitments to new public transport funding. Don't come and repeat the new heavy rail stations and whatnot. That was the previous government. We look forward to this new LNP government bringing forward announcements and real funding to public transport in this city, because it desperately needs it to ensure it doesn't come to a grinding halt in the future.
Thank you. So we put the motion to you. All in favour? Against? Carry. Thank you, Gleb and Nick. So we've got 7.4. This is a closed session, a late item, strategic land acquisition for district sports, recreation and cemetery. We do need to go into close for this one. I think we've got up there for local government regulations, for local government budget, a negotiation relating to commercial matter involving local government, for which the public discussion would likely prejudice the interests of local government. Do I have a mover to go into close? Councillor O'Neill, seconded Councillor Taylor. All in favour? Carry. Streaming off. Got no one in the gallery. We're back at our 7.4, strategic land acquisition. We have got a change of recommendation that we would like to defer. Up in front. Land acquisition, recreation, to be deferred to full council the 16th September 2025 to get more information in relation to this item. So can I have a mover of that? I'm happy to move it. Seconder, Councillor O'Neill. All in favour? Against? Councillor Carey. General business? Any general business? No? Close the meeting at 16:54. Thank you.